Chapter 2411 Sprinting Wildly on the Celestial Path. Chapter 2411 Sprinting Wildly on the Celestial Path. A great many people had not even managed to see Ling Han. They only managed to glimpse a figure blazing past them like lightning. Because Ling Han was too fast, he caused a powerful gust of wind. In fact, a great many people were thrown off the Rainbow Bridge by the force of the wind. Upon closer look, one would discover that these people were all those that had spoken badly of Ling Han before, who said that Ling Han was not the type to hold a grudge. Not bothering to pay them any attention did not mean that he had forgotten. Since he had run past them, he would put slightly more effort into it while he was at it. Sending these people off the bridge as a small punishment naturally was just a very slight effort for him. If this was flatland, to create a gust of wind from sprinting to send these consummate-level ascending origin tier elites tumbling was absolutely impossible, unless Ling Han made a deliberate move. But this place was different. The Rainbow Bridge was incredibly slippery. Everyone had to walk carefully on it, so how could they bear up against this external force? All of a sudden, it was like a celestial maiden scattering flowers as countless people fell down from the skies. That scene was quite grand and magnificent. Who is this? He's a bit too powerful, isn't he? Others can only walk cautiously, yet he can sprint at full speed. This overwhelming strength is completely unfair. Hiss, why do I feel that his rear view is a little familiar? Ling Han. He's Ling Han. There will always be those with sharp eyes, and they recognized Ling Han. With this call, everyone was dumbfounded. The one that was sprinting madly on the Rainbow Bridge was actually Ling Han. Heavens, previously everyone had still been laughing at him. Alchemists were only alchemists, after all. But now, there was no one with that kind of freakish talent. Even added together, would all of them be able to compare to him? Have you guys noticed? Those that have been blown off the celestial path were those people that laughed at him before? Someone asked slowly. With this reminder, everyone's expressions instantly changed. Now that you're saying it, it seems like that really is the case. The more you think about it, the scarier it is. His sprint is actually targeting them, showing that even now, his grasp of power is still proficient and smooth. I am about to lose my mind. How could such a freak exist? That's right. In alchemy, he's king, and now in cultivation, he's also leaving us all behind in his dust. No one can be his equal, and he is peerless in this world. Everyone exclaimed in shock. Comparing yourself to him would truly drive you crazy. Ling Han released a battle cry. His speed became faster and faster. It was like what lay beneath his feet was not a path of trial formed from regulations, but rather a wide path that could not be more ordinary. One after another, he sprinted past everyone. In the first place, the Eastern Celestial Realm did not have many Emperor tiers, and now that they had all been enrolled into the Saintly Origin Academy, or had gone to the Western Celestial Realm as summoned by the Heavenly Venerates, while those that stayed could not be considered the bottom of the barrel, there were indeed not even many Emperor tiers among them. When Ling Han had passed a certain Emperor tier, there was already no one ahead of him. The Empress and the others' lead was extraordinarily huge. And when they saw Ling Han sprint past him, that Emperor tier almost fell off the Rainbow Bridge in his shock. Gods, he'd seen a ghost. Ling Han ran for a considerably long time again, right until he was drawing close to the end of the Rainbow Bridge. Only then did he finally see the Empress and the others. The Empress and Hunyo were both progressing smoothly, but bewitching Maiden Ro was doing considerably worse. Her forehead was covered with sweat. After all, she was only a monarch tier, unlike Hunyo and the Empress, who were both monarch stars. Ling Han. Hunyo was the first to discover Ling Han and immediately waved at him. She was in the lead, and behind her was bewitching Maiden Ro. With such a sudden stop, bewitching Maiden Ro almost collided with her. This which continuously patted her bountiful bosom at the near miss, causing it to wave alluringly. Who knew if she was doing it on purpose? Ling Han caught up and grinned. Thankfully, I've caught up. The three women had not reached the end of the Rainbow Bridge yet. He had not broken his promise. They walked a few more steps, and the Rainbow Bridge reached its end. The end of the Rainbow Bridge was actually connected to a steep cliff. This cliff was very strange. It was illusory, and whichever angle one looked at it from, it seemed to be non-existent. It could only be seen when one was standing on the Rainbow Bridge, and could only be set foot on from there as well. The power of heaven and earth was not something that could be humanly studied. They all stepped onto the cliff, and the steady and real feeling of gravity returned to them. They felt a profound ease at this. Otherwise, it would feel like they were hanging in midair. This first step tests one's agreement with Tao, Ling Han said, turning his head. The Empress nodded. If understanding of Great Tao is still not thorough enough, there would be no way to pass through here at all. This first test would eliminate half the candidates, and also gave a resounding blow to many rookies who had come for the first time. Becoming a celestial king was not as simple as they had imagined. We still have 10,000 years' time. Once the celestial path was open, or rather after this mystery realm had begun, there was 10,000 years' time for them to roam around here and search for the true celestial path. Furthermore, after 10,000 years, the celestial path would close and reopen only after another 10 billion years. If they could not manage to leave in time, they wouldn't die, of course. However, this was extremely close to the core of this heaven and earth. There was a mysterious power here. As long as one stayed here for more than 10,000 years, they would be bound by this power and would never be able to leave again. There are only two ways if you want to leave this place. First, go back on the path that you have come. Second, head to the center of this mystery realm. There is something similar to a transfer formation there, but only a celestial king would be able to activate it. In other words, if you can't become a celestial king, you can only go back the path that you have come. But if you penetrate too deep or lose your way, the moment the deadline of 10,000 years has passed, you would be eternally trapped here. Since the ancient times, countless people have been trapped here, and as they grew older and had children, this mystery realm has become more and more populated. Additionally, though they would be eternally trapped here, they could also let go of all other worries. They would have boundless time to attempt becoming a celestial king. Hence, there would be celestial kings here, and their number would not be too few either. Ling Han and the others were all thinking back on the information about the celestial path. This was something that they had to know. I am truly quite curious. Yin Xinlu was born on the celestial path. Could it be that there were two ascending origin tiers that fell in love with each other here and couldn't stop themselves from being caught in their passion? Ling Han had a strange expression on his face. He truly wanted to see just who these two were. Bewitching Maiden Ro could only shake her head. Why was this guy's thought process always so strange? They dared not be careless. At first, they thought that they could walk unrestrainedly on the celestial path, but since this place had celestial king tier beings, they had to be careful. Moreover, having become a celestial king here, they were still unable to leave. Perhaps their personality would also have become warped. They had better not encounter this kind of maniac that would trap them here and prevent them from leaving. That would really be a great loss for them. Haha, you've lost. Amidst a loud bout of laughter, two people were seen walking towards them. One was tall, and the other was short. They were both men, and presently, it was the shorter man that was speaking to the taller man. Meanwhile, the taller man glared at Ling Han and his group, baffling Ling Han and the others. What did we do to you? Why are you looking at us so viciously? The shorter man snickered. I made a bet with him that after the celestial path opens this time round, the fastest person would walk over the Rainbow Bridge within 3 days. I bet on yes, and he bet on no. Hence, now that we've seen you here, it naturally proves that I've won. The taller man revealed a blazing killing intent. As long as I kill them, there wouldn't be any, right? You can't be that kind of sore loser, the shorter man hurriedly exclaimed. Yet Ling Han chuckled. How overbearing. Wanting to kill just for something like that? Can't I? The tall man scoffed. There is no way your celestial king tier elites can come in here, but we have celestial kings on guard here. Thus, it would be best for you to submit obediently. Chapter 24:12, Blue North King. Chapter 24:12, Blue North King. This was a very realistic threat. The celestial kings of the celestial realm were unable to enter into the celestial path. If they really wanted to, they could, but they would have to cripple themselves and cultivate from the beginning. Yet there were celestial kings within the celestial path. Then, the celestial kings here would be comparable to heavenly venerates that were invincible. Ling Han laughed. He dared to even point at heavenly venerates and insult them to their faces. How could it be that he would be scared by an ascending origin tier? He walked forwards. What I despise most is when someone threatens me. This is not a threat, the tall man stated calmly, his eyes menacing. His killing intent was indeed very strong. He did not know Ling Han and the others, but who asked these people to be really too despicable? They actually walked over the rainbow bridge so quickly, causing him to lose. He was displeased and wanted to kill. As for those outside the celestial path, apologies, he only considered them his prey. Nyo was the first to jump out. If you want to fight with Nyo's Ling Han, you have to first pass Nyo. She was mostly just itching for a fight. There was no one that could match her in the Eastern Celestial Realm at all. As an elite, she felt very lonely. The tall man couldn't help but be stunned. Both Nyo and the Empress were too beautiful to look at, and he had held himself back from looking previously. But with Nyo stepping out like this, all his attention was involuntarily captivated as his heartbeat sped up. You still want to kill Nyo's Ling Han, you smelly bug. Nyo made the first move. Boom. The moment she made her move, it was incredibly frightening. Her tiny fist shot out, but it was like the heaven and earth were collapsing. The expressions of both tall and short man changed drastically. Though the short man had not had any killing intent, he had not taken Ling Han and his group seriously either. It wasn't right until this show from Nyo that they finally realized just how terrifying the opponent was. No wonder they had managed to cross the Rainbow Bridge within 3 days. Without overwhelming talent and strength, how could they possibly accomplish this feat? And this was because they had not witnessed the scene of Ling Han sprinting madly on the Rainbow Bridge, or they would definitively be scared to death. The tall man quickly moved to parry, but in front of Nyo, he was completely far from enough. Very soon, he was suppressed completely, and defeat was only something that would happen in an instant. This was natural. Nyo was a monarch star. Ah! The tall man roared in fury. He took out something red that looked a little like dirt, and then actually stuffed it into his mouth. Even if you're no match for Nyo, there is no need to eat dirt, right? Nyo laughed loudly. The tall man did not reply, but his battle prowess actually soared many times over in an instant, with multiple veins popping out all over his body, making it seem like he had turned into some kind of monster, which was extremely frightening. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Even if this tall man flipped out suddenly in this state, he actually would still be no match for Nyo, yet he now had the ability to fight back. But it should be known that Nyo was a monarch star. This person was a king tier, at most. What the heck was that red thing to actually be able to help a king tier instantly realize a double leap in strength? From king tier to monarch star, the increase to battle prowess was astonishing. Humph, Nyo will still beat you until you burst. Nyo shouted, her tiny fists shooting out in a barrage of punches. True enough, the tall man was suppressed in only about 100 moves. Even if they were both monarch stars, there were still differences in strength, and the present Nyo belonged to the category of extremely powerful monarch star. Nyo's foot stomped on the tall man. He struggled, wanting to get up, but he felt like there was an immovable colossal mountain weighing down on him. He couldn't move the slightest bit. Hee, we can talk things over, the short man hurriedly played mediator. He, too, had gotten a scare. He had not expected that Ling Han and his group would have such terrifying strength. Even when his companion had used the ultimate means, he was still unable to win. Ling Han smiled and asked, that bright red thing, you have it too, right? The short man hesitated slightly, and sure enough, he took a bright red object from his robes. It really looked like mud, but it was very sticky and smooth, filled with bounciness. There was completely no way to discern what this was. Ling Han took it over and studied it closely, but could not sense anything at all. He thought for a while, and then bit into it. The short man couldn't help but be dumbfounded, wondering if this person was an actual idiot. He didn't even know what this exactly was, and actually dared to bite into it? What if this was a deadly poisonous substance? Ling Han naturally dared to eat it, because he had very strong confidence. Firstly, the tall man had eaten it too, and secondly, Ling Han's physique was incredibly amazing. He was just that tiny sliver away from the Celestial King tier, and could completely be considered a Celestial King himself. Thus, he was naturally unafraid. He was too curious. To be able to cause a King tier's strength to spike so madly, this was no ordinary object. Ling Han's eyes lit up. His body was actually absorbing that unique power of this heaven and earth. Fuck, this thing was too shocking, wasn't it? Wait, no. Ling Han immediately shook his head. Though his body absorbed this kind of power, it could not truly absorb it. His body could only be considered a passage, and in this process, there was not the slightest improvement to his physique. If anyone wanted to use this to comprehend the first step towards heavenly venerable tier, this would be completely impossible. Even so, this was too amazing. A bright red thing could allow one to lend the power of heaven and earth. No wonder the tall man's strength had suddenly soared so greatly. Just like Ling Han, who was clearly only at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, his battle prowess had directly soared to the first heaven Celestial King tier, but it was not so exaggerated for him. Furthermore, this thing would be useless outside of the celestial path. Thus, it was only here that the power of heaven and earth would be so close, but once you were outside, it would be far from reach. What made Ling Han even gloomier was that he could not obtain the slightest improvement to his battle prowess, and the ultimate reason was probably because he had already used the void particle energy, which was even higher in level to temper his body, so the red demonic dirt had no effect of boosting his battle prowess. Hunyo was keen. The more Ling Han forbade her, the more she thought about it. Because it was the tall man who had shown killing intent first, Ling Han had no plans to stop her, either, but instead told Hunyo to have fun playing. Once she was bored with it, she would not keep *** at the tip of her tongue in future. The little girl took out an iron spear, a malicious expression curling up the corners of her lips. Then, all of a sudden, she stabbed it into the behind of that tall man. Ah! The tall man released an agonized wail. He could be no more tragic than this. Ling Han ignored him and merely patted the short man's shoulder. Oh, right. I forgot to ask who you guys are. The short man wanted to cry. You guys are too cruel, aren't you? You don't even know who we are, and you've beaten up my colleague, and have even a $r at pet him. It hurts even just by looking. We are the subordinates of the Blue North King. Ling Han smiled. Come, tell me all about this Blue North King. In the Celestial King, it was natural that every Celestial King would be called a king. Because of various reasons, there were many people who had not managed to leave the celestial path in time, and as a result, they were trapped here for eternity. Furthermore, there were some that were outstandingly talented among them as well. The majority of them were emperor tiers. After going through an extensive period of time, there naturally was a chance for them to become celestial kings as well. Additionally, those that were trapped would also have children here, and as generations passed, some outstandingly talented descendants would emerge from their line and become celestial kings as well. The Blue North King belonged to the latter category. He was a native that was born and raised on the celestial path, while his parents were both disciples that had come from great sections. However, they had not managed to become celestial kings ultimately. Instead, it was he that possessed the aptitude of an emperor tier, and after countless years of hard cultivation, he had reached the pinnacle of his life. The Blue North King ruled over the crucial point where the Rainbow Bridge entered into the celestial path. If one wanted to barge into the expansive space of the celestial path, they would first have to pass through the territory of the Blue North King. Ling Han asked further about the power structure in the celestial path, and finally gained further knowledge of this place. Inside the celestial path, even the celestial king with the highest cultivation level was only at third heaven. It could not be helped. It was practically impossible that there would be monarch tiers among those that would remain here, so it was naturally difficult to attain fourth heaven or fifth heaven. Chapter 24:13. A complete celestial seed. Chapter 24:13. A complete celestial seed. The Blue North King was a first heaven celestial king and had ascended Tao around 7 billion years ago, but his strength was still quite extraordinary. That was why he managed to lay claim to his own territory and become the ruler of his territory. However, the closer it was to the core of the celestial path, the greater the forces would be, and the stronger the celestial kings there would be as well. Why? It was said that there was an amazing treasure at the heart of the celestial path. All the great celestial kings were contending for it. Hence, they established their own forces. On the one hand, it was so that they could war with one another, and on the other, they were searching all over for it. But so far, no one had managed to obtain this treasure yet. Ling Han very much wanted to know what this treasure was. Unfortunately, limited by his status, the shorter man had no means of knowing this great secret. Then, what is this thing? Ling Han tossed the red substance in his hand and caught it again. This thing was very shocking, actually being able to stimulate that unique power of the celestial realm. Though it could not be used to temper the body, if he could experience it continuously, it would definitely help Ling Han advance faster to the heavenly venerable tier after he had broken through to the 9th heaven celestial king tier. We call this the crimson demonic earth, the shorter man replied. Where does it come from? Ling Han was more curious about the origins of this substance. Could it have been shot forth from the core of this realm? I don't know either, the shorter man said. He was speaking honestly. This material was nothing rare in the celestial source. Just like alchemical pills and weapons, there would be people selling it, and the price was not exceedingly high either. At the very least, it was completely a price that an ascending origin tier could afford. Direct consumption was actually the simplest method to use the crimson demonic earth. It could also be used for building structures, which would boast incredibly firm defense. This was also how the crimson demonic earth had gotten its name. Additionally, adding a little crimson demonic earth when forging weapons would greatly increase the might of the weapon, but crimson demonic earth was a consumable substance. Once it was used up, this weapon would become ordinary as well. What about celestial seeds? Ling Han asked further. Celestial seed is an extremely valuable item, the shorter man quickly replied. At the same time, his expression also held a hint of envy. One can only harvest celestial seeds by himself and nurture it in his own body. The moment it is taken out, it will be worthless. I have already been at the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier for 7 billion years, but I still have not gathered enough celestial seed shards, and celestial king tier is still far ahead in the distance for me. He shook his head, seeming very disappointed. To obtain a complete celestial seed was an illusory feat. One could only gather broken shards, and then use their own body as a cauldron to fuse them together. Those who were more powerful would be able to nurture an entire complete celestial seed. Just ask all the celestial kings in the world. The majority of them had progressed from the ascending origin tier in this manner. But there were also those who had heaven-defying luck and strength, and had directly obtained a complete celestial seed. After they became celestial kings, their strength was also world-shaking, far surpassing that of celestial kings of the same level. This could be considered the pinnacle level of the ascending origin tier. Instantly, Ling Han felt his heart throb wildly. He did not hope that Lu Yutong and the others like his parents whose natural talent was not that high in the first place would fight. Hence, it was all right as long as they could become celestial kings, and no longer had to be afraid of a mortal's tribulation. They could use the celestial king pill that was refined with the celestial seed that was pieced together from broken shards to break through, but he, Hun Yo, and the Empress, as their main military strength, would definitely have to break through with complete celestial seeds. Otherwise, he would rather choose to retreat from the celestial path before the deadline of 10,000 years, and wait for another attempt after another 10 billion years. If the foundations were not sturdy enough, how could a high tower be built? Let's go and take a look at Blue North City. Ling Han had the shorter man lead the way, setting out towards the territory of the Blue North King. After Hunyo played for a while, she lost interest. With a clap of her hands, she could not be bothered to pay any more regard to the taller man, and set off in pursuit of Ling Han and the others. This journey to Blue North City was not very long. It only took about half a day's time before a great city appeared ahead of them. Ling Han was surprised. In his impression, the cities of the celestial realm were all as large as planets, but this city was far from reaching this extent. Instead, it was about the same size as the cities in the lower realm. He could see the entire city with just a single glance. "I heard that the cities from outside are countless times bigger than this?" the shorter man asked. When he saw that the tall man had not died, he was relieved. There was no need for him to worry that Ling Han and his group would kill him to keep him quiet. Ling Han nodded and said, "Why are your cities here so small?" "Probably because we have a small population," the short man answered as he sighed. Indeed, there was a limited number of people who would be trapped here every time the celestial path opened, but after so many years, they should have multiplied and had many descendants, growing in great numbers, right? According to the short man, this mainly was a problem of birth rate. Even if the people here were not very strong, the chance of pregnancy was still exceedingly low. Hence, there was no need to build a very large city at all, or it would be hard to see even a single person in a radius of 5,000 kilometers. The short man led Ling Han and the others into the city. The people here also knew that the celestial path would be open every 10 billion years. Hence, the city was also incredibly lively, taking out various local products to be used to trade for things that could not be found here. If these goods were resold again in the future, it would definitely bring a fortune. Of course, the Crimson Demonic Earth was the most important of all. Aside from it being sold directly, there were also weapons and shields that were forged from a mixture of Crimson Demonic Earth and other materials. Their prices were also very profitable. The strange thing was there were no star stones produced on the celestial path. Hence, star stones had also become something that the locals of the celestial path hoped to obtain from the outsiders the most. These products of Crimson Demonic Earth were actually very ordinary in the eyes of the local seven. If they weren't considered ordinary, they would just be slightly more expensive items. They were just like celestial medicines. Though they might be expensive, there would still be buyers. But as Ling Han saw it, these were all items that could not be seen or bought outside. He did not mind spending great sums to purchase them. In any case, star stones were actually the most worthless items to him. The party of four shopped madly, and the shorter man felt very envious as he watched them spend star stones like flowing water from the sidelines. This was something that was in shortage on the celestial path, and it was also an expendable item. They could only replenish their stores every 10 billion years. What Ling Han lacked the least was money. They only returned with satisfaction once they had bought about enough, but a great many traders were still chasing behind them, fighting to shove their goods off on them. They previously had truly been too spendthrift, not even bargaining when they were shopping. This kind of customer was naturally their favorite. There were inns here, and Ling Han and his group rented a courtyard, planning to spend some time here primarily because they wanted to find out about celestial seeds. There were two types of celestial seed in the celestial path. The first type was a complete celestial seed. One could become a celestial king just by obtaining one, but firstly, this item was incredibly rare, and secondly, it would definitely be located in extremely dangerous and terrible environments, and once there were others contending for it, it would definitely result in massive bloodshed. Who did not know that a naturally complete celestial king was incredibly valuable, and that someone who used it to become a celestial king would have battle prowess that was much greater than his peers? The second type was an incomplete one, which could appear anywhere. What Ling Han wanted to know was if there were any complete celestial seeds in the vicinity. He made his queries, and he really did manage to get some information. Around 5,000 kilometers outside of Blue North City, there was indeed a complete celestial seed. There was a celestial tree there, which would flower every few trillion years and bear fruit after another several trillion years. These fruits would only ripen after yet another few trillion years, and altogether, it would take precisely an entire epoch. And the fruits borne by this celestial tree would be complete celestial seeds. Furthermore, there could be as many as 3 to 5 fruits born on this tree. Ling Han's heart thumped in excitement. Chapter 24:14 Mist-Locked Valley. Chapter 24:14 Mist-Locked Valley. A celestial tree could bear several fruits, and every single fruit was actually a complete celestial seed. Ling Han needed a very large number of celestial seeds, and when he heard wind of this information, he was naturally tempted. Though there were very few complete celestial seeds, there would still be people who managed to obtain them as well, and a lot of information had streamed out. For example, the closer to the heart of the celestial path, the closer to perfection the celestial seed fruits borne by the celestial trees there would be, and the stronger the celestial kings that had obtained these fruits. If he could obtain complete celestial seeds here, Ling Han had no plans on refining it himself, but he would keep one in reserve just in case. If he had still not managed to find a better celestial seed when it was close to the deadline of 10,000 years, he would use this celestial seed to complete his breakthrough. It was still better than using a celestial seed that was pieced together from different shards of celestial seed. Very quickly, they set out on their way. The fruits of this celestial tree were close to ripening. Perhaps it would be another 3 years, or 10 years, but in any case, the time would definitely not be too long. Just half a day later, they arrived at their destination, a valley that was enshrouded in mist. One would be immediately dazed when he entered, completely incapable of distinguishing any sense of direction. They would then walk back out of the valley in a complete daze. Once, twice, thrice, no matter how many times, it would produce the same result. It was like they would be endlessly lost. Formation? Ling Han and the others were all curious. They tried to unravel it, but this fog was formed naturally, and there was no rhyme or reason to it. They had no idea where to get started. After a few times, they still walked back out of the valley. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. If Wally was here, it would be great. With the analysis ability of this non-human, he might be able to unravel the mist of this valley. There is no need for you to waste energy. A voice slowly rang out, bearing a powerful magnetism. A young man walked over, dressed in tight-fitting white robes. He looked very handsome, a laid-back expression on his face. Ling Han looked over. Why do you say that? The mist in this valley would only disperse at midnight every night. It will last for 2 hours, and only at that time will anyone be able to enter. Otherwise, no matter how strong or how high your cultivation level is, you will only be running around in circles even if you enter, and just come right out in a daze, the young man in tight-fitting robes explained. Thanks for the tip. Ling Han clasped his fists. There was night and day on the celestial path, but day would last 72 hours, and night would also last 72 hours. A single day was shockingly long. Outsider. The young man in tight-fitting robes raised a brow. Ling Han smiled. How can you tell? The young man laughed. Aside from outsiders, who else would dare come here? What did this mean? Was it because this place was too dangerous, so no locals would dare to come? Or was it that this had been partitioned as forbidden land by some force, forbidding any interference from outsiders? I am Ling Han. How should I address you? Ling Han asked. Just because the other party had chosen to give them a hint, he also chose to adopt diplomatic measures before violence. Shin Hao, the young man answered. Outsider, this is not a place that you should be in. Trust me. Ling Han gave an "oh" and asked, This place is extremely dangerous. You can say that. Shin Hao thought for a moment and then nodded. But the source of this danger is primarily humans. Ling Han understood now. The environment here was indeed dangerous, but it should have been occupied by a particular force, and that was why the man said that the main source of danger was humans. What I enjoy most is battle, and the stronger the opponent, the better, Ling Han said. Shun Hao's eyes narrowed slightly, and then said, Outsider, you have very strong confidence. However, your knowledge of our area is too limited. You will be disadvantaged. Ling Han was unconcerned, and took out a handful of crimson demonic earth. With a grin, he asked, Are you talking about this? Shin Hao was surprised. He was indeed planning to say that if outsiders did not know about the crimson demonic earth, they would lose horribly against an opponent of the same level, or even one weaker by a single level. He had not expected that this outsider had already found out about the effects of the Crimson Demonic Earth when the Celestial Path had just opened. In fact, he even had a considerable amount of it in possession. I had not expected that you would actually discover the secret of the Crimson Demonic Earth. He paused, and then continued, looks like you have Celestial King tier elders in your clan, right? Celestial Kings would definitely have walked the Celestial Path before. Thus, if Ling Han had a Celestial King behind him, it was nothing strange for him to know about the Crimson Demonic Earth. Ling Han smiled slightly and did not refute that. Did having or not having a Celestial King tier background have any importance here? In any case, the hand of the Celestial King could not possibly interfere here. He continued the previous conversation topic. If we don't leave, could it be that you are planning to use violence against us? Once more, Shun Hao showed a laid-back expression. I can't be bothered to. However, I am the lazy type, but the others would not do the same. Ling Han laughed loudly. You are quite interesting. Yet Shun Hao shook his head. Outsider, don't think that you are very strong. Let me give you a piece of advice. On the Celestial Path, our strength is usually greater than yours. This clearly was Shun Hao looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. Though the majority of ascending origin tiers were indeed very ordinary, king tiers were already very rare, after all. Naturally, emperor tiers and monarch tiers were even rarer to come by. Monarch stars were definitely few and far between. Hence, it was very easy for the residents of the Celestial Path to consider all outsiders as ordinary ascending origin tiers. If anyone doesn't like it, Nyo will beat him into submission. Nyo brandished her tiny fist in a wave, looking very fierce. She was exquisitely beautiful, and also held the air of naivete that belonged to a young girl. This action did not seem to be the slightest bit destructive, and others would only think that she was cute and innocent. Shin Hao couldn't help but be dazed for a moment, and he only came back to himself with a tremble a moment later. He shrugged carelessly. In any case, I have already warned you. Whether you heed my warning or not is your own business. He yawned, and looked like he simply wanted to find some place to lie down and have a good nap. Second senior brother, whom are you talking to? A person flew down from the cliff in the distance. It was a woman who was very beautiful. Her tight-fitting red suit outlined her shapely figure. Her eyes swept over, and when she discovered the presence of Nyo and the other women, her eyes involuntarily narrowed. Too beautiful. One was noble, one was innocent, and the last was seductive. Even she felt her heart throb faster upon seeing them. She couldn't help but feel a sliver of killing intent. There was actually someone that was superior to her in looks, and it was not just one, but as many as 3 of them at that. Shin Hao's brow raised slightly, not bothering to answer. Outsiders? The red-clothed woman swept down a glance again, a sliver of a smile curling up the corners of her lips, but her smile carried cruelty. It was easily resolved since they were just outsiders then. If she killed them, that would be completely fine. There was no need to worry about leaving behind any trouble. Actually daring to barge into here, you all are seeking your own deaths, the red-clothed woman declared coldly. With a shake of her hands, a winding blade appeared in each of her hands. Each winding blade was branded with 9 seals, and they were already glowing. She had activated her precious tool. From the get-go, she was going to have no mercy, planning to kill Ling Han and the others. Firstly, it was forbidden for outsiders to interfere in this place, and secondly, she was jealous of Nyo and the other women, and had thus immediately lit up her blades. Ugly people are always doing deeds that are up to no good. The Empress sneered. With a few graceful steps and slight swaying of her slender waist, she was both seductively beautiful and elegantly noble. One's heart would tremble, yet at the same time, it would not dare to disrespect her. This was a goddess that could only be admired from afar. Even the red-robed woman's bearing was weaker. In fact, her back had involuntarily bent slightly, but she immediately came back to her senses. She was abruptly infuriated and embarrassed. With a soft exclamation, she charged towards the Empress. Pong! With a flash of red, she was sent flying at a speed faster than when she had shot forwards. Chapter 24:15, Jealousy. Chapter 24:15, Jealousy. Xinhao gaped, the laid-back expression on his face completely gone. He was shocked to the extreme. This was really a slap to his face. He had just said that Ling Han and his group had to keep a low profile and could not be too arrogant. On average, the people here were all stronger than those from outside. But now, the Empress had rendered him completely speechless with a single slap. The Empress slowly withdrew her hand. It was precisely she that had sent the red-clothed woman flying with a single slap. The red-clothed woman coughed out blood. She could still remain standing. After all, she had the aptitude of a king tier, and the Empress had only struck her casually. Her eyes were similarly filled with astonishment. Her precious tool had unleashed its might, and added with how she had attacked without reservations, she actually still could not withstand a single blow from this woman in front of her. The latter had to have consumed crimson demonic earth, or so she thought, but she could not deny that even if the latter had consumed crimson demonic earth, the Empress' own strength should be about equal to hers to defeat her in a single move. Their strength was on equal levels, yet there was such a large gap in their appearances and bearing. She found it hard to maintain the balance in her heart. The gods were really too prejudiced. How could they show so much favor to a single person? Don't think that you are the only one who has crimson demonic earth, she humphed. In the first place, this was a local product of the celestial path and could only be effective on the celestial path. She immediately took out a bit of crimson demonic earth and stuffed it into her mouth. It was only an instant, and the aura that was exuding from her became completely different, filled with pressure and intimidation. This was too amazing. It had directly raised her vitality index by around 200 points. The Empress disdained consuming dirt. She was confident and dominant, and merely looked down on the red-clothed woman. In her eyes, this was only a disloyal subject. If she didn't like the look of her, she could just erase her directly. Die! The red-clothed woman charged over, brandishing her twin blades, their cold glint dazzling. Previously, she had not managed to exhibit her true strength at all. Now, with the stimulation of the crimson demonic earth, her battle prowess had spiked, and also allowed this pseudo-celestial tool to unleash a frightening might. Shio, shio, shio. Flash after flash of cold light turned into arrows of ice that shot towards the Empress. The Empress was unafraid. She struck out with a hand, stimulating the regulations of time, and the arrows of ice that filled the skies seemed to be frozen as she easily swept them aside. Meanwhile, a freezing technique also seemed to have taken effect on the red-clothed woman. Even moving a single finger had become incredibly difficult for her, and she could only watch helplessly as the Empress came closer, about to place a jade-like hand on her. The red-clothed woman roared in fury, her whole body surging out white light. Finally, she parried the frightening flow of time and retreated 300 meters with a tap of her foot. Pong! She had still been slightly scraped by the force of the strike from the Empress and almost spluttered out a mouthful of blood again as it caused her extreme pain. Wielder of regulations of time, she hissed venomously, the jealousy in her eyes almost seeming to seep out. Previously, the Empress had already shown enough to incite her jealousy, yet now she actually discovered that the former had even grasped the regulations of time. This was the regulations of time that had a noble status above all other regulations. As long as their cultivation levels were equal, then the person who had grasped the regulations of time would definitely possess an extremely great advantage, and only a celestial king would be able to cancel out this advantage. How could there be such a naturally blessed person in this world? She was defiant, and her killing intent blazed even hotter, filled with a strong sense of humiliation. She took out another suit of armor, which she put on. This was a defensive tool that was forged from crimson demonic earth and allowed her to possess frightening defensive strength that could resist the power of regulation. She had not used it previously, because the crimson demonic earth was a consumable substance. Once it was used up, this armor would also become an ordinary defensive tool. With the treasured armor on her, and her hands wielding twin blades, the red-clothed woman's confidence had completely recovered. She was going to battle again. Rather than fighting, why don't we just have some tea and chat? Shinhao spoke up to mediate the strife. He had a vague feeling that even if this junior sister was completely equipped from head to toe, it was still impossible that she could match the Empress. Hence, rather than letting things progress to the point that he would be troubled to step in, he would rather just call a halt to things now. Primarily because he was lazy. The red-clothed woman sneered. Sure, as long as she kneels down and kowtows in forgiveness, I will spare her life. To actually beat her to spitting up blood twice, how could she forget this kind of grudge? There was naturally no way that the Empress would agree. Her eyes were malevolent. A mere lowly woman actually dared to demand that she kneeled. Just what extent of insolence was this? Insolent subject, she exclaimed, and charged out head first. Boom! Her aura surged out like an ocean. The red-clothed woman approached. Pong, pong, pong. The two of them burst out into an intense clash. With the protection of this suit of armor, the red-clothed woman was finally qualified to stand against the Empress. The two women exchanged blows, and it could be claimed that they had both met their match. However, one with the slightest bit of a brain could tell that the red-clothed woman's defeat was actually destined. She could only stand against the Empress by depending on this suit of armor and the Crimson Demonic Earth, but the effect of the Crimson Demonic Earth had a limited period of time. Once it was exhausted, her battle prowess would fall back to its original level, and her armor would also become a pile of scrap metal. By then, how was she supposed to stand against the Empress? What the Empress should do was very simple, and that was to exhaust her. But if she did that, she would not be the Empress. That was not her style. How could a dominant Empress allow her opponent to last for such a long time? She delivered a series of palm strikes against the armor. Though this could not wound the red-clothed woman, the frightening power was still endlessly pouring out, which could speed up the exhaustion of the Crimson Demonic Earth in the armor. The red-clothed woman paled in shock. If this went on, she wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. But the both of them had consumed Crimson Demonic Earth, so why was the Empress so powerful, and why would the effects last for such a long time? It should be known that the Crimson Demonic Earth could not be consumed in large quantities. When the limit had been reached, consuming just the slightest bit more would cause terrifying consequences. Another 100+ moves later, she fearfully realized that the might of the armor was beginning to decrease. The Crimson Demonic Earth was close to exhaustion. Gritting her teeth, she took out another portion of Crimson Demonic Earth to stuff into her mouth. Ninth junior sister, are you mad? Shinhao couldn't help but call out. The overconsumption of Crimson Demonic Earth would cause damage that could never be recovered from. Yet the red-clothed woman ignored him completely. She had already swallowed the second portion of Crimson Demonic Earth, and a howl instantly left her mouth, as if a lion had been injured. Her face had originally been very smooth and pretty, but now it was covered with veins, making her look frighteningly ugly. In only an instant, her black locks had all turned white, as if she had aged several decades in an instant. However, her aura was soaring wildly, her frightening power even taking solid form and becoming multiple black mountains. If one was hit by these mountains, it was guaranteed that severe injuries would ensue. A second use of the Crimson Demonic Earth would cause irrecoverable injuries, but the boost to strength was instantaneous as well. The red-clothed woman felt her body was filled with power. In fact, a feeling of indulgence rose up in her. She wanted nothing more than to consume the Crimson Demonic Earth continuously so that she could stay in this state without end. She was filled with confidence and glared menacingly at the Empress. Be asterisk Tisich, you will suffer miserably at my hand. Ling Han shook his head. This woman was completely overwhelmed by her jealousy. She could not bear to see how the Empress was more outstanding than herself, and was determined to prove that she was better. As a result, she had pushed herself into such dire straits. If she knew that the Empress had not used the Crimson Demonic Earth at all, would she directly die from fury? The two of them weren't on the same level at all. No matter how much she fought, It would only be an ugly person doing deeds that were up to no good. The Empress's killing intent also spiked. Her sharp eyes held ferocity, and an endless imperial dominance spread out from her. The red-clothed woman released a battle cry and charged towards the Empress again. Her arms danced quickly like wind, her blades sweeping out in a brilliance that filled the skies. Her white hair waved wildly, as if she had gone insane. Chapter 24:16. My fists are the biggest. Chapter 24:16. My fists are the biggest. The Empress humphed slightly, and as her palms waved, the power of regulation blasted from her palms. She herself turned into the flow of time. At one moment, she would be in the past, and in the next, she would be in the future, so bizarre that she could not be glimpsed. The red-clothed woman's strength had been greatly boosted under the effects of the Crimson Demonic Earth, and because of the Crimson Demonic Earth, she was close to the extent that she could not be touched by any attack. Thus, it was very difficult for the Empress's regulations of time to take effect on her, but there was not the slightest difficulty in exerting them on herself. The two of them clashed, and the regulations of time was indeed the highest level of regulations there was, and was also a major regulation that any realm would be equipped with. It was incomparably strong. It could only be seen that the Empress was beating down on the red-clothed woman, while the latter's counterattacks were all wasted effort as they could not hit their target at all. The red-clothed woman's defeat was only a matter of time, and it would not take too long either. Humph, to actually dare commit a crime against the line of Blue North. What brazen courage! Amidst a loud cry, two men arrived, each of their faces bearing a strong sense of pride. Yet when they saw how the red-clothed woman was disheveled, and how her black hair had all turned gray, they both paled in shock. Was this still their 19th junior sister that prized beauty like her own life? 19th junior sister, how have you become like this? I will come and help you. The two men rushed out at practically the same moment, but bewitching Maiden Ro humphed lightly. She shot out and stood in their way, rebuking the two men harshly. Step down. She was skilled in the art of enchantment, but she walked the path of royalty. Others would submit to her, worship her, and admire her, but it was not the type for seducing others. Otherwise, Ling Han would not have tacitly approved of her presence, either. With this exclamation, both men looked dazed. The gaze they directed at bewitching Maiden Ro was first vacant, but then became feverish. It was as if they had encountered their benefactor of 9 lifetimes. They wanted nothing more than to lower their heads and bow, surrendering even their lives without the slightest hesitation. Shinhao couldn't help but stare. These two were both his junior brothers, and their strength had long since reached the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, but that woman did so as well. Yet without even a single blow, both of them had knelt directly. He could not accept this at all. The two men stepped down as commanded, while their eyes gazed feverishly at bewitching Maiden Ro. They only needed a word from her, and they would be willing to go through water and tread on fire. The red-clothed woman almost threw up blood. Weren't you guys saying that you wanted to help me? Now what the heck are you two doing? In a moment of distraction, she was instantly hit with a series of blows from the Empress. The heaven-destroying 9 swords slashed out, and she was covered with blood all over. Several places of her clothing had also been torn, and she looked incredibly battered. The Empress would not quit while she was ahead. She raised her hand slightly and sent out another sharp gust with a finger. It turned into a flash of frightening sword chi which would kill the red-clothed woman. Please have mercy. Shinhao hurriedly moved. No matter how lazy he was, there was no way that he could just stand by and watch his junior sister being killed. Pong! He managed to block this blow. An astonishing flush suddenly rose up on his initially fair face, as if he was drunk. This was because the Empress's sword chi was too harsh. Though he had resolved the blow, his blood had still been shaken. He felt he was close to spluttering out a mouthful of blood. He paled in shock. He had only known that the Empress was very strong, but after taking on this blow, he had a first-hand experience. No wonder his junior sister would be suppressed by the Empress even after consuming 2 mouthfuls of crimson demonic earth. The Empress's eyes sharpened, exuding a boundless dominance. She was going to kill a rebellious subject, and someone actually dared to stop her? She would just kill both of them, then? Ling Han grinned and said, "Wife, just stop for a moment." He thought that Shen Hao was quite a nice guy, and it would be a pity if he died just like this. Only then did the Empress dismiss her intention. She walked back, her arms crossed behind her back, dominance and imperial might spreading out from her. Bewitching Maiden Ro also giggled and stepped back. Only at this did the two men snap out of their trance. They looked at one another, and both could see an intense shock and lingering fear from the other's eyes. If Bewitching Maiden Ro had commanded that they killed each other just now, they would definitely have executed her command without the slightest hesitation. It was not certain whether they would be dead or still alive now. Thinking about how their lives had been easily taken control of by another, their hearts squeezed strongly. Ling Han heard how the two of them had said, "the line of Blue North," and thus asked Shen Hao, "Are you all the disciples of Blue North King?" The red-clothed woman had gotten her breath back and shouted at Ling Han, "So you are afraid now?" Ling Han looked towards the red-clothed woman, his eyes clear and calm, but an aura was still pressing down on her. The red-clothed woman felt as if a large rock was weighing down on her heart, and even breathing was difficult for her. Her face instantly turned pale. "You are asking to be beaten." He moved and sent a slap through the air at her. When his hand rose, the force of the blow had already arrived. With a resounding slap, the red-clothed woman stumbled backwards suddenly. She opened her mouth and spat out a few broken teeth along with blood. "Brother Ling, though my junior sister speaks fiercely, she really does not have any malicious intent, so please have mercy." Shen Hao hurriedly stepped in, the astonishment in his heart even stronger. Every single member of this group of four had powerful strength and was completely different from the outsiders that they had imagined. Only then did Ling Han withdraw his gaze. Turning towards Shen Hao, he smilingly asked, "So you guys are just planning to stake a claim on this territory and say it's yours so that you can seize the celestial tree inside for yourself? This is the territory of the line of Blue North, so the celestial tree naturally belongs to us." A man that had previously been enchanted by Bewitching Maiden Ro immediately declared to Ling Han. Ling Han chuckled. "Are you joking with me?" "Who's joking here?" That man was both furious and embarrassed. He was not a 3-year-old toddler. Ling Han brandished a fist. "All the treasures in this world should naturally be obtained by those who have big fists. I think that my fists are the biggest. Does any one of you disagree?" The man wanted to say something, but he could not say a word. Ling Han and his group were too strong. He and his companions had not been able to even unleash a single attack before being directly defeated. Now, they did not have the slightest bit of confidence left. "Brother Ling, even if you chase us off, it would be useless." Shen Hao shook his head. "How so?" Ling Han turned to look at him. "Do you see that? This mountain fog can prevent entry." Shen Hao pointed at the valley that was enshrouded in fog. "This is the first layer of protection, and after entering, it would be extremely dangerous. The closer you get to the celestial tree, the harder it is to approach. Though we have claimed this place, none of us have actually gotten near that celestial tree." Ling Han nodded. "I know that. If someone had only staked a claim in the territory, it could not possibly be so difficult to harvest the celestial seed, because there would ultimately be someone who could obtain it. Furthermore, the very hardest trial would be the celestial tree itself," Shen Hao continued. "It is only hearsay for me as well. The celestial tree possesses an amazing ability to flee and escape. No power can trap it. If it does not wish to bestow the celestial fruits to you, even a celestial king would be completely helpless." Ling Han's determination naturally would not waver with just a few words from him. He voiced some detailed queries to Shen Hao, and soon gained a deeper understanding of this celestial tree. Where did the shards of celestial seeds come from? They were the pollen that was scattered when this kind of celestial tree was in its blooming season, or the fragrance that was contained in the fruit which spread through the winds and was thus obtained. The reason why Shen Hao and the others stayed here was firstly that they wished to obtain a complete celestial seed, But this was too difficult. Hence, they settled for the next best thing, planning to capture some of the rotten fruit, leaves, or the like that would be shed from the celestial tree. Gathering little by little would eventually accumulate, and they would then be able to piece an incomplete celestial seed. Chapter 24:17. The Celestial Tree Appears. Chapter 24:17. The celestial tree appears. In the sky, the sun was gradually setting, and the moon was slowly rising. After a long time, the moon hung in the middle of the sky, and the fog in the valley suddenly evaporated completely. We can go in now. Shenhao was leading the way ahead, while Ling Han and his group followed behind. Meanwhile, after the red-clothed woman and the others glared harshly at the receding backs of Ling Han and his group, they turned around and left. They were going to return and file a complaint. A few outsiders actually dared to covet the celestial tree. The Blue North King would definitely be furious when he found out. Who knew? He might personally move to deal with Ling Han and his group. It was very strange. Previously, the fog in the valley filled the air, and one could not even see the fingers on his own hand. In a daze, he would somehow circle back out. Now, however, not even the slightest bit of fog could be seen, though there was no sunlight. Underneath the gentle and beautiful moonlight, everything was an elegant white, and everything could be seen very clearly. It was not difficult to traverse this stretch of path. Shenhao walked very quickly. Ling Han and the others naturally would not be so easily trusting. Every step they took would be placed on the part of the ground that Shenhao had already walked over, which they also memorized firmly. After they had walked for around 5 kilometers, the scene ahead suddenly opened up to a wide panorama. It was like they had walked into a plain. "Look over there," Shenhao said, pointing at a cliffside in the distance. Ling Han and his group all focused their eyes and looked over. Vaguely, they could see a tree that was growing on the side of the cliff. It was only 3 feet tall and had very dense leaf coverage. Meanwhile, 5 bright red fruits were growing in between the leaves and were covered in veined patterns that could not be described with words. It was not known whether it was because they were too far off, but they could not see the clear details of the veined patterns. "It should not be because of distance," Ling Han soon declared, shaking his head. The Empress nodded to express her agreement. "We are only 3,000 meters away from that celestial tree, at most. But when we look at that celestial tree, it seems blurred. This is not normal. When will the fruits ripen?" Hunyo was more concerned about this. Shenhao thought for a while. "Even my master does not know when the celestial tree would bloom or bear fruit. This celestial tree has always been public knowledge as well, so no one knows the exact details of the time. But in the last few months, the fruity fragrance could be smelled. According to ancient scrolls, the time of ripening for the fruits should be within the next 10 years. "It's here," he suddenly exclaimed, immediately falling to sit on the ground. Ling Han and the others also smelled a refreshing fragrance. It could not be clearly described what kind of fragrance it was, but it was extremely fragrant, revitalizing, and soothing, as if they had fused with great Tao. "This fragrance is emitted by the celestial tree. Don't miss out on it. It can be used to form a celestial seed," Shenhao advised. Ling Han and the others were all curious. The shards of celestial seeds were really everywhere. They still sat down cross-legged and inhaled that fragrance, experiencing it carefully. A kind of enlightenment surged in their minds, where a tiny point of light took form, as if to nurture something. So this was a celestial seed shard? Seems like the celestial seed is very easily formed, Hunyo immediately declared. Ling Han also thought that it was odd. Going by this manner, as long as he inhaled a few more breaths of the fragrance, he would be able to condense a complete celestial seed without needing too many years. Shenhao asked them, and when he found out about their circumstances, he couldn't help but stare speechlessly. After a long while, he finally asked in a stuttering voice, Could it be that you guys have the legendary celestial physique?" "What celestial physique?" "Celestial physique means that you are connected with great Tao and are prodigies that can easily condense a celestial seed," Shenhao explained. It is practically impossible for such a person to appear on the celestial path. I heard that this kind of monster could only appear among the outsiders. Ling Han gave an O. This so-called celestial physique should be referring to monarch tiers, an existence that was destined to be capable of becoming a celestial king. Thus, it was especially easy for them to form a celestial seed, and through previous efforts, they had already gained the approval of the heaven and earth. Forming a celestial seed and becoming a celestial king was only going through the motions. But a celestial king like that would have limited strength because this was pieced together from incomplete celestial seeds. How could it compare to a naturally complete celestial seed? Ling Han explained this to the three women, which also gained the latter's agreement. Three of them were monarch stars, so it was naturally even easier to form a celestial seed. And Ling Han himself had actually surpassed the usual range of monarch stars, and his evolution index had already broken through to 11. They were all nurturing celestial seeds. This was completely fine as long as they did not allow the celestial seed to sprout in their bodies at the last step and grow into a celestial tree. They could discard it at any moment and start again from the beginning with a new celestial seed. Nurturing a celestial seed could help them experience the Tao of Celestial King tier in advance, which would be greatly beneficial for their future cultivation. Take Shen Hao and the others, for example. They were also condensing a celestial seed as they waited for the celestial fruits to ripen. If they could harvest it, they would exchange the celestial seed without the slightest hesitation. Ling Han experienced it carefully. Even an incomplete celestial seed represented the regulations of heaven and earth, which reached directly to the essence. Only once he figured out the essence of the regulations would he be qualified to surpass regulations and become a celestial king. Why do we not go forward a little more? Ling Han suddenly asked. If they stayed here, a considerable amount of fruity fragrance would be dispelled by the winds. Shen Hao shook his head. It cannot be helped. It is too dangerous ahead, so we can only be here. Master, too, has come before, but the moment he came, the celestial tree immediately fled. Hence, it is impossible to rely on the power of a celestial king to harvest the celestial seeds. This was quite interesting. Ling Han did not stare blankly on the spot. He immediately stood up and walked slowly onwards. He was not satisfied with just absorbing a little pollen here. Since he would be contending for the fruits in future, he first had to probe the path ahead of him because the fruits might only ripen 10 years later, but it could also be tomorrow. The time for this celestial tree to bear flowers and then fruits was a whole epoch. The time of around 10 years would in comparison be like the time it took for an ordinary person to breathe in, which was extremely short. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. When Ling Han took the 5th step, he abruptly discovered that the valley had changed. Previously, the moonlight was as clear as jade, yet now it was filled with an eerie feeling. It was like he had entered into a pit of ghosts all of a sudden. This was not just a feeling. A coldness suddenly rose up from underneath a rock, and it quickly formed a skull, which released a sharp cry as it pounced towards Ling Han. The cry was incredibly shrill, as if it wanted to burst Ling Han's eardrums with the volume. Ling Han humphed. In the clear and bright universe, how could demons and ghouls be allowed to do evil? Disperse quickly. Humph. Pa, that skull immediately exploded. Holy fuck. Shen Hao saw this, and his heart involuntarily squeezed strongly all of a sudden. It was not that he had not attempted to barge past here. He had similarly been faced with this skull. Though he had indeed managed to barge past, he was battered and exhausted. It was only after great effort that he managed to deal with it. Yet with a shout from Ling Han, the skull was shattered. The gap in strength was really as wide as the gap between heaven and earth. Ling Han was not concerned over Shen Hao's shock. He continued forging onwards, and very soon, another rock glowed and turned into a sword that swept out towards him. Ling Han waved a fist and pong. This sword was suddenly shattered into bits. Shen Hao was dumbstruck once more. In the past, it was this sword that had forced him into retreat. He had only managed to pass this sword after a whole 7 attempts. Ling Han must have consumed the crimson demonic earth, he thought. Otherwise, he would really lose his mind. Ling Han strode onwards. Every rock and every bit of earth here could become a great weapon that would launch an attack at him, but they were all dealt with by a punch or a shout from him. He was a supreme monarch star. To say nothing of body art, merely in terms of regulations, his vitality index reached as high as 4,600 points. Chapter 24:18, Barging Through. Chapter 24:18, Barging Through. In one go, Ling Han walked 1,500 meters ahead, as easily as if he were walking on flatland. His speed finally slowed when he reached this point. The attacks that manifested again had become increasingly frightening and could no longer be resolved with a single punch or kick. Shen Hao shook his head internally. He, too, could barge to this point, but he would have long since consumed Crimson Demonic Earth. Otherwise, around 150 meters would be his limit. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. A few figures dashed over, and they all looked to be young men. Senior brother Shen, they first called out towards Shen Hao, and then turned to look at Ling Han, who was in the distance. He's close to his limit, right? And here I thought he was all that strong. In the end, he's just... For an outsider to manage to walk to this point is already very impressive. They talked among themselves, all revealing a strong feeling of superiority. In their eyes, there was no way that Ling Han could advance further. Senior brother Shen, why have you brought them here? Someone demanded of Shen Hao. That's right. The others all nodded. This was the private property of the line of Blue North. Though it was practically impossible for them to obtain a complete fruit, merely inhaling some fruity fragrance here could help them become celestial kings in a few billion years. This was an amazingly great opportunity. Now that Shen Hao had brought 4 outsiders in, this would naturally affect their interests, which made them extremely displeased. Shen Hao merely responded with a lazy smile and ignored them. Ahead of them, after Ling Han took another step, he saw a large rock glowing, which actually manifested into a golden rabbit. Xiao, the rabbit leaped, a pair of golden rays shooting from its eyes, blazing fiercely towards Ling Han. Ling Han greeted the oncoming attack with a fist. Hiss! When the golden light landed on his fists, it created a dazzling brilliance. How stupid can he be? To actually use his bare fists to withstand an attack of fierce light? When the newcomers saw this, they all shook their heads repeatedly, expressing their extreme puzzlement. 1,500 meters was a new threshold. After this line, the attacks here would become incredibly harsh, especially when it was this kind of golden light. It was filled with frightening destructive power and could only be parried with pseudo-celestial tools. Ling Han actually used his bare fists to colch with it. Wasn't that just committing suicide? How opinionated. Haha, I'm just waiting to see his fists turn into ash. Those that had newly arrived were all jeering and mocking. In any case, this did not concern them. Furthermore, Ling Han was an outsider, so they naturally wanted nothing more than for Ling Han to be torn into bits. Golden light filled the space, but the scene that everyone anticipated did not appear. Ling Han aggressively charged out, his fists unscathed and uninjured, a crystalline light flowing from them and blasting towards the golden rabbit. Pong! The golden rabbit was instantly sent flying, a hole actually appearing in its chest. The new arrivals all felt their facial muscles twitch, lost for words. Meanwhile, Shen Hao smiled faintly. Previously, he had almost been scared to death by Ling Han, and now that he saw the expressions of these junior brothers of his, he felt pleased for some reason. I bet that he will not be able to barge past 2,250 meters, one of them said through clenched teeth. Obviously, even Lord Master has said that from 2,250 meters onwards, that would practically be Celestial King tier attacks. What ascending origin tier would be able to block that? Someone immediately followed. Aside from Celestial Kings, no one can barge past here, but when Celestial Kings arrive here, the Celestial Tree would immediately escape. Hence, this is a problem with no solution. The Empress finally couldn't take it any longer. She glared menacingly at them. Shut up. The few of them were immediately about to flip out, But when they saw the noble, elegant appearance of the Empress, their mouths merely opened, and they could not say a single word. Ling Han sent out a series of over a dozen punches and beat the golden rabbit till it burst with force. His steps paused slightly. The vitality index of the golden rabbit had reached about 4,500 points, and it should be known that the average peak stage of the consummate level ascending origin tier would only be 4,300 points. Only a monarch star would just barely reach 4,500 points. Ling Han was a supreme monarch star, so he reached 4,600. In other words, this rabbit was so strong that even ascending origin tier monarch stars would frown deeply. This thought merely flashed through Ling Han's mind and vanished. Ling Han continued onwards. Another insignificant-looking black rock glowed and turned into a black wolf that released a howl at Ling Han. Shio, shio, shio. With this howl from the black wolf, multiple black-colored blades of wind were released from its mouth and sliced out towards Ling Han. Instead of retreating, Ling Han forged onwards, sending out his fists in a fierce, extremely overbearing barrage. Pong, pong, pong. He aggressively charged until he reached the black wolf. He thrashed it now that he was close enough. In merely over a dozen punches, this black wolf was beaten until it burst and turned back into a black rock. Strangely enough, there was not the slightest bit of damage to the black rock. Ling Han was curious and picked up the black rock. After some thought, he turned back round and picked up that golden rock from before. When the others saw this, they all felt an urge to clap a hand on their foreheads and howl to the heavens. They had never seen someone like this who would pick up even rocks. This was no treasure at all, and could only show its might within the valley. Yet Ling Han curiously played around with the two rocks, but no matter how much energy he pushed into them, these two rocks did not have the slightest reaction. It was like they were just ordinary rocks. Even if they cannot show their might, they would still be good for slamming on others, Ling Han thought, and stowed these two rocks away, growing keen as well. He wanted to retrieve even more rocks. He forged onwards again, and more rocks manifested, launching attacks on Ling Han. The further he advanced, the fiercer these attacks became. When he was almost close to reaching the 2250-meter point, the vitality index of the rock's taken form had already soared directly to 4,600 points. In other words, even for supreme monarch stars, this would be their limit. Ahead, there was still a distance of 750 meters to the end of the valley, and the celestial tree was upwards of that point. Shinhao shook his head. Even after consuming 2 mouthfuls of crimson demonic earth in succession, this would be the limit. No one could consume 3 mouthfuls in succession. That would not have the slightest bit of boost to strength. The person would only die immediately. The others were all filled with anticipation, hoping that Ling Han would advance further and then get killed. Ling Han paused slightly and then raised a foot, which he quickly placed down. Wong, a rock that was as high as 9 meters, suddenly came to life, turning into a rock golem that was similar in height. Pong, 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 stepping on the ground. It caused even the ground to tremble as it raced towards Ling Han. Frighteningly fierce might spread out. It was like a primordial beast that had come from the primitive age, capable of destroying anything and everything. Finally, Ling Han did not dare to be careless any longer. He executed his strongest ability. Body art. Pong. He threw a punch, no longer holding back. A terrifying scene appeared. This rock golem had been shattered with a single punch. Fuck. 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 Shinhao and the others were all frozen stiff. Countless asterisk darting through their minds. They could not understand it all. Previously, Ling Han's battle prowess had clearly reached its limit, but why had he suddenly become so much stronger? This was close to reaching Celestial King tier battle prowess. This was practically a fatal shock. Could it be that he has just consumed Crimson Demonic Earth? One of them asked in a quavering voice. Impossible. The others all shook their heads. If Ling Han had not consumed Crimson Demonic Earth previously, how could he be so strong? In fact, he was even stronger than them when they had consumed the Crimson Demonic Earth. I have heard before that though the majority of outsiders are very ordinary, there are also some amazing prodigies, one of them said slowly. Just like how we are obviously stronger against others of the same cultivation level. This is named King Tier. King Tier? The others heard this, and all appeared slightly proud. This was a good name, which they were very satisfied with. But above the King Tier, there are another 2 levels, the person from earlier continued. What? The others were stunned at this. They actually were not prodigies of the very highest grade? Chapter 24:19, Change of Attitude. Chapter 24:19, Change of Attitude. These disciples of the Blue North King were all extremely arrogant and thought that their aptitudes were some of the best. Otherwise, how could they have possibly gained the notice of the Blue North King? And now they were told that there were other stronger prodigies that were 2 levels higher than them. How could they possibly accept that? The man from earlier continued, Emperor Tier is superior to King Tier, and Monarch Tier is superior to Emperor Tier. King Tiers are invincible against their peers of equal cultivation level outside, and Emperor Tiers can still be invincible with a gap of a minor level. As for Monarch Tiers, they would be invincible even with a gap of 2 minor levels. Everyone was struck speechless. They knew themselves well. Before advancing into the ascending origin tier, they could only be invincible against their peers. Now that they found out that there were some that could actually be invincible with a gap of 2 minor levels, they could not accept it. The feeling of superiority that they had maintained for such a long time instantly collapsed. So, as it turned out, there really were such freaks in this world. Meanwhile, Hunyo scoffed, "You guys really are frogs at the bottom of a well." Monarch Tier is not the strongest. Above the Monarch Tier, there is still the Monarch Star, and there are another 2 levels above the Monarch Star itself. However, the levels higher than Monarch Star had no specific name, and only had the measurement standards of Evolution Index, which was respectively 11 and 12. Ling Han's Evolution Index had reached 11, but 12 was really hard to imagine. Hearing Hunyo's words, everyone was even more dazed, filled with disbelief. Ling Han was still bravely forging onwards. He was exerting his full might, and his body art was incredibly frightening. He could destroy an enemy with a single punch. This was completely the act of a celestial king, and also caused everyone to become distracted. They thought that Ling Han actually should be a celestial king who had deliberately disguised himself as an ascending origin tier. In just over a dozen breaths' time, Ling Han had charged to the mountainside. Looking from this angle, that celestial tree was much clearer. He tried to climb the mountain. Instantly, a frightening pressure assailed him, which made him feel extremely heavy. He was like a rock that had been tossed into the sea and could only sink downwards. Just this to make things difficult for him? Ling Han gave a shout, and a boundless light surged out of his body and instantly bore up against the pressure as he climbed upwards towards the summit. Shen Hao couldn't help but shake his head, filled with ruefulness and admiration. Indeed, we cannot compare to him, because he has completely developed the human body's treasure troves. Human body's treasure troves? Everyone asked, and even the Empress and the others turned to look at him. Every person is a tiny realm of their own, containing great power and is equivalent to a treasure trove. If one could completely unleash his power, his battle prowess would be supreme. Shen Hao said solemnly, "This is what Master has said." Everyone looked solemn at this. Since this was what the Blue North King has said, it had to be a supreme truth. The Empress and the others nodded as well. Actually, Wally had said something similar, but it was too profound. Something like if one's own quality was decreased by even a single gram, they could release power strong enough to destroy a planet. It could not be understood at all, but the basic meaning was the same. Every single person was a treasure trove in itself. They had all been nurtured by the heaven and earth, and possessed the power of heaven and earth. As long as this power could be extracted, their battle prowess would be extremely terrifying. Amidst their stunned exclamations, Ling Han had climbed to where the celestial tree was. Because he was not a celestial king, the celestial tree did not flee. It seemed like this was natural order. If the person who needed the celestial seed could come here with his own power, the great opportunity would be easily reachable. Ling Han did not pluck the fruits directly. He merely watched those few celestial fruits and observed them. They had not ripened yet, and plucking them now would be too much of a waste. But even at such a short distance, he could not distinguish clearly the veined patterns on the fruits, as if there was a mysterious power that was concealing them. Ling Han waved a hand over at the Empress and the others, telling them to come over as well. Otherwise, if he proceeded to pluck the fruits, they would either be for his own use or be concocted into a Celestial King pill. However, if one used the Celestial King pill, their cultivation level would be eternally limited to the first heaven Celestial King tier. That naturally could not be done. The Empress and the others began to barge through. Their strength was also very powerful, but their vitality index was only around 4,500, and definitely could not compare to Ling Han's. Hence, they could only reach around the 1,500-meter point. Bewitching Maiden Row was even weaker. She was only a monarch tier, and was already battered and exhausted even before she reached the 1,500-meter point. They each took out some crimson demonic earth, which they consumed, and when their battle prowess had been greatly boosted, they forged onwards. Shen Hao and the others could see this clearly. At this, they were completely convinced. The Empress and the others had used their own power to barge to that earlier point, and had even surpassed them when they had already consumed the crimson demonic earth. With this simple comparison, the gap in their strength was extremely apparent. Unlike Ling Han, who had long since been tempered by the power of heaven and earth, and on whom consuming crimson demonic earth would have completely no effect, the strength of the Empress and all the others gained an astonishing boost. For Monarch Stars, their vitality index would soar to 4,800, and for Monarch Tiers, vitality index could also rush to 4,700, allowing them to sweep aside all obstructions. They were practically unstoppable. But the closer they got to the cliffside, the stronger their enemies became, which made their progress increasingly difficult. Thankfully, the three women worked together, and still managed to battle their way to the foot of the cliff. It was rumored that the closer one is to the heart of the celestial path, the more perfect the celestial seed would be. Then, it was clear that the difficulty level of obtaining it would be higher and higher. Ling Han shook his head internally. Looks like Bewitching Maiden Row was only limited to this. She had exerted her full efforts just to obtain the complete celestial seed here. If there was only the slightest increase to difficulty, she would definitely be unable to pass. True enough, the three women began to climb the mountain. Bewitching Maiden Row had managed to climb to the summit, but she was panting very heavily, as if she would pass out at any moment. We should train more here. I think stronger celestial trees would also be hard to approach, and it would be even harder than this in the future, Ling Han said. The Empress and Hu Niu both nodded. Later, they would retrieve a celestial seed, but definitely would not use it to break through immediately. After all, this was just a complete celestial seed, but not a perfect one. Bewitching Maiden Row grimaced. The fact that she managed to become a monarch tier itself was already surpassing her own potential and limits, and she had to make another breakthrough now. That was really too difficult for her. They observed the celestial tree at close quarters and only descended into the valley after a very long time. If the celestial fruits were ripe, there would be very obvious advance signs. The intensity of the fruity fragrance would be raised over 100 times. When Ling Han and his group returned, Shen Hao and the others all looked feverish. In their thoughts, there was absolutely no one that could pluck the celestial fruits. Thus, they had only placed their hopes that they would be favored by the heaven and earth, and the fruits would drop after ripening, and there would just happen to be one that coincidentally rolled to their feet. But the chances for this kind of possibility naturally was close to practically zero. But now, someone really could pluck a complete celestial seed. Though absorbing the incomplete celestial seeds and continuously piecing together and nurturing them, they would still eventually obtain a complete one. Compared to a naturally complete celestial seed, there was at least a gap of 3 times of battle prowess between the celestial kings that broke through with these different methods. Hence, they all rushed towards Ling Han and his group. Brother Ling, was it? There are a total of 5 celestial fruits up there, Yet there are only 4 of you. Why don't you sell the last one to me? Just name your price. No, sell it to me. I guarantee that my offer will be double of anyone else's. My offer will be 2 times higher. Mine is 5 times. I offer 10 times. They scrambled over themselves and offered conditions that would scare even themselves. However, if they slowly accumulated incomplete celestial seeds by themselves, there would be no hope of completion without at least a few billion years. If they could become celestial kings in advance, no matter how high the price they had to pay was, what fear would they need to have that they would not be able to earn back what they had paid? Chapter 2420, The Blue North Celestial King. Chapter 2420, The Blue North Celestial King. Ling Han naturally would not be promising anyone. There was an exceedingly large number of people in his family that needed Celestial King pills. Even if he had 100 celestial fruits, that would not be too many for him. What more when there was only a single extra fruit now? Seeing how Ling Han was unwilling to agree to their offers, everyone's eyes bore hatred, but no one dared to show their resentment. The gap in strength was too wide. However, some of them had already left. They would seek out the Blue North King and make their complaints. Why should celestial seeds that were formed in their own territory be obtained by outsiders? They would ask the Celestial King for help, forcing Ling Han and his group to pluck the ripe fruits and then hand them over to them. That was even better. Shen Hao sighed. Brother Ling, you guys are being too showy. This is just creating trouble for yourselves. What is it? Ling Han asked smilingly. You guys have proven that you possess the strength to pluck the celestial fruits, and no matter how strong you guys are, there is no way you can match a celestial king. Shen Hao shook his head. Those junior sisters and junior brothers of mine would definitely ask Lord Master to step out. By then, you guys will only be paving the way for others, and may even be in life-threatening danger. Ling Han was surprised. Why did this Shen Hao keep favoring outsiders instead of his own side? Such a personality was really hard to come by. Brother Shen, you are truly a very strange person, he said with a chuckle. Shen Hao grinned as well. I was born like this. Nothing I can change. Ling Han nodded. However, there is no need for you to worry about us, Brother Shen. Since we have come to the celestial path, we have naturally prepared ourselves. To say nothing of his terrifying body art, he had not used those several heaven and earth origin stars, either. There was nothing better than that as an intimidation tactic for lower-tier celestial kings. Shen Hao naturally would not believe him. The gap between ascending origin tier and celestial king tier was far, far too large. There was absolutely no one that could breach this gap at all. However, since Ling Han was so insistent, Shen Hao couldn't be bothered to persuade him further. This was also part of his personality. Ling Han and his group sat quietly, absorbing the fruity fragrance of the celestial tree while they nurtured the celestial seed in their minds. Day after day passed, and other people finally arrived at the valley. These were outsiders. They had entered Blue North City at a much later time, but still knew about the existence of Crimson Demonic Earth and a complete celestial seed. Hence, they, too, had come here, hoping to test their luck. If they really managed to obtain a complete celestial seed, that would be reaching the sky in a single bound. Grandmaster Ling. Greetings, Grandmaster Ling. Greetings, Grandmaster Ling. When they discovered Ling Han, everyone hurriedly approached to pay their respects. He was a 5-star Grandmaster, someone even more awesome than a lower-tier celestial king. Who would dare to be disrespectful? Only now did Shen Hao discover Ling Han's identity. Realization dawned on him. No wonder Ling Han had such overwhelming confidence and could be unafraid of even celestial kings. As it turned out, he was a great elite that could concoct celestial king tier alchemical pills. With this identity, even the Blue North King would indeed have to give him some face, unless the Blue North King could guarantee that he could prevent any news from leaking out after capturing Ling Han. Otherwise, there would definitely be countless celestial kings that would invade his territory. This kind of great alchemist was really too useful. More and more people had come to the valley. Mostly, they were king tiers and emperor tiers. Ordinary ascending origin tiers were still struggling on the Rainbow Bridge. If they managed to cross the bridge within 1 or 2 months, that would already be very impressive. Hence, with their strength, added with the aid of the Crimson Demonic Earth, Shun Hao and his group could not stop them, either, and could only allow their entry. Thankfully, it was just a few hundred people, and would not have too much impact. Many people did not believe how difficult it was to traverse this valley, and insisted on crossing the valley. In the end, they naturally caused themselves a great amount of trouble. There were some that almost died. Even with more people that had suffered a loss, everyone naturally learned their lesson. However, there would always be new arrivals who thought highly of themselves and were determined to test themselves. Ling Han sat quietly. Though he could only absorb some fruity fragrance now, and there was a sliver of celestial seed shard contained within, in essence, there was actually not much difference compared to a complete celestial seed. Hence, he studied the celestial seed in his mind. As greatest eternity, everlasting physique was channeled, he imposed time acceleration effects on himself. A complete celestial seed merged with the cultivator would be able to grow into a celestial tree, and this would be a first heaven celestial king. And when the celestial tree bloomed flowers and bore fruit, seeds would grow again, and that would be a second heaven celestial tree. This process repeats itself 9 times, and that would be a 9th heaven celestial king. Every time the celestial seed grew, bore fruit, and grew seeds once more would be a transformation of regulations, advancing in the direction of greater strength. By now, Ling Han was already qualified to touch the threshold of celestial king tier. Thus, he studied the celestial seed shards and attempted to understand the celestial seed and the Tao of celestial king tier at a more primary level. Unfortunately, this celestial seed inside his body presently was too incomplete, so the information he obtained was really just mere scraps, and he could not piece out much of anything. Unexpectedly, the Blue North King had not appeared all this while. It was unknown whether he was too busy to appear, or could not be bothered to suppress a few ascending origin tiers, or if it was not time yet, and he would wait until the fruits of the celestial tree fully ripened before appearing to force Ling Han to pluck the fruits and hand them over. In the blink of an eye, 7 years had passed. At a specific point in time on this day, the fruity fragrance wafted over, yet it seemed as if these celestial fruits were right underneath their noses with how astonishingly intense the fragrance was. The celestial fruits have ripened. Instantly, everyone's eyes became bloodshot. These were naturally complete celestial seeds. If they used this to become celestial kings, their battle prowess would be at least 3 times stronger than other celestial kings. 3 times. Yet though they were only 3,000 meters away from the valley, such a short distance seemed to be like a gulf, and it was completely impossible to cross this gulf at all. They could only stretch out their necks and hope that a fruit would drop, and then roll to their feet with a gust of wind. Wong, right at this moment, a frightening pressure spread out, and a person was slowly walking out of the fog. This was too amazing. With the fog locking in the valley, someone actually managed to walk over. Master! Shin Hao and the others all knelt, paying their respects to this person that was walking over. This was the Blue North King. No wonder. Only a celestial king could ignore the fog ceiling in the valley. Ling Han also looked over and saw that this celestial king looked to be in his mere 20s. He was handsome and clean-cut, bearing an exuberant spirit of youth, and others would be filled with admiration for him. The Blue North King was enshrouded in brilliant light, but it was only limited to a single color. This very clearly told the masses that he was a first heaven celestial king. Now that a celestial king had appeared, a fragrant air fluttered in the air, signifying that the celestial king had obtained the doting favor of the heaven and earth, which was unlike heavenly venerable tier. The moment a heavenly venerate appeared, they would be struck by lightning, and if they dared to make a move, they would be further targeted by the heaven and earth. It was not impossible that they would even be killed. The red-clothed woman and the others tailed behind the Blue North King, following him blindly, reverent to the extreme. The outsiders also paid their respects, though some of them had second heaven, third heaven, or even stronger celestial kings in the forces that backed them. In this place and time, they had to express due respect. The Blue North King raised his head slightly. He was used to the worship of everyone, so naturally would not be concerned with this kind of respect. With a turn of his gaze, he looked towards Ling Han and his group. That was very simple. In the entire area, it was only the four of them that had not knelt. They stood out too abruptly. "I heard that you are a 5-star Grandmaster?" the Blue North King asked, his tone still quite polite. Ling Han nodded. "That's right." A great 5-star alchemist completely had no need to lower their head in front of a lower-tier celestial king. What more when Ling Han's own battle prowess was not much weaker than that of a first heaven celestial king, either, and combined with his terrifying defense, it was not certain who would be the final victor even if they did really come to blows. The Blue North King smiled. "Are you interested in staying to help me?" Chapter 24-21 Fighting a Celestial King. Chapter 24-21 Fighting a Celestial King. The Blue North King extended an olive branch towards Ling Han. If this was outside, there would definitely be a great many people that would be laughing at the Blue North King for overestimating himself. As a mere first heaven celestial king, he actually wanted to recruit a 5-star Grandmaster? Did he not fear that the guest would be too powerful to the point of bullying the host? But in this place, even the strongest celestial king was only at the 3rd heaven, which had imperceptibly lowered the status of a 5-star Grandmaster considerably. Hence, this recruitment venture of the Blue North King would not seem too abrupt. Ling Han broke into a smile. "Thank you for your regard, Brother Blue North. However, I am only here for the sake of becoming a celestial king, and have no intention to stay too long on the celestial path." As long as he had walked the celestial path, he, too, would be a first heaven celestial king, and added with the label of a 5-star Grandmaster, he would definitely be much stronger than the Blue North King. Hence, there was no need for him to be humble in front of the latter. Moreover, his present strength was also endlessly close to the celestial king tier. If they really got into a fight, it was uncertain who would win between the two of them. The Blue North King couldn't help but raise a brow slightly. There were no 5-star Grandmasters on the celestial path. Hence, the fact that a 5-star Grandmaster was an equal to a celestial king was nothing but a myth to them, and now a mere ascending origin tier directly addressed him as Brother Blue North, causing a feeling of displeasure to rise up in his heart. This was the celestial path. No matter how great your background was outside, it was useless. There was no way that they could interfere here. However, as a celestial king, he naturally was not one who would easily show emotion. Hence, he stated evenly, "All right, since Grandmaster Ling's ambitions do not lie here, I will not force the matter either." He paused slightly. "However, this celestial tree ultimately belongs to the line of Blue North. Since Grandmaster Ling is interested, I naturally would not refuse to part with it. I shall bestow one of the fruits on Grandmaster Ling then." He only mentioned gifting one to Ling Han, but as for the remaining 4, his approval would have to be gained. Ling Han was unafraid, and did not back down as he asked, "Shouldn't all natural treasures only be obtained by those with the strength and fortune to come upon them?" When everyone heard this, their heart throbbed strongly. Was Ling Han planning to publicly go against the Blue North King? Even outside, where the status of a 5-star Grandmaster was revered, the respect for them was still granted by cultivators. For example, celestial kings would be polite and respectful, but that was only on the surface. If any 5-star Grandmaster really went too far, a celestial king could still ignore them. After all, this was a world ruled by cultivators. This was the celestial path. A first heaven celestial king was an extremely powerful existence, and Ling Han actually dared to refute the Blue North King so directly. This naturally caused worry for those who were listening. Let's just put it this way. If the Blue North King really killed Ling Han, just see what celestial king of the celestial path would come and make trouble for the Blue North King for the sake of a dead 5-star Grandmaster? Not even one. Sigh, this guy was really treating the celestial path like the celestial realm. The label of 5-star Grandmaster was not as useful on the celestial path. The outsiders all shook their heads, while those from the line of the Blue North looked furious. Even Shun Hao looked grim. The Blue North King was an extremely subtle person. He did not flip out even after having been refuted like this, and merely looked coldly at Ling Han, saying, "Young man, you are very outstanding. At such a young age, you have already gained such prolific achievement in alchemy, and it is also hard to find a peer that could match you in cultivation. In the future, you will definitely attain greater accomplishments. However, if you are too stubborn, you will be broken easily. If you show too much of your skill, you will not be able to live until then either." This was a threat from a celestial king. A fearful pressure spread out, and everyone felt their heart constrict, which was an indescribably terrible feeling. Yet Ling Han was unconcerned. The strength of his physique was in fact close to the celestial king tier. This was but mere aura, and he wanted to suppress him with just that. "I still stick by my words. All natural treasures would be obtained through destiny," he said, neither servile nor overbearing. The Blue North King chuckled, yet stretched out his right hand and grabbed out at Ling Han through the air. Source power stimulated the regulations, turning into a giant golden hand. Multiple seals flickered to life. This was a manifestation of the Tao of heaven and earth. A celestial king had moved. Being impacted by just the slightest bit of shock wave, even the heavens were trembling, as if this realm was about to collapse. Ling Han's expression remained unchanging. In his eyes, a first heaven celestial king was really not worth much. He had already slaughtered many of them, and it was not just once, but thrice, and the strongest celestial king among them had even reached fifth heaven. Ling Han unleashed fists of fury and channeled the terrifying power in his body. His attacks would be launched with his thoughts. Pong! A fist shot out furiously, striking towards the giant golden hand. When everyone saw this, they were all gaping in astonishment. This was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. A mere ascending origin tier actually wanted to clash head-on with a celestial king. Just how much was he overestimating himself? "You are courting death," the red-clothed woman and the others all declared coldly, especially the red-clothed woman. She had suffered too great a loss. She could not possibly recover her black hair, and there were also a great many wrinkles on her face now, so her hatred towards Ling Han and his group was naturally bone-deep. The outsiders were also shaking their heads. It looked like the Eastern Celestial Realm would be returning to a state when they had no five-star Grandmaster from now onwards. Pong! Just when everyone was entertaining various thoughts, Ling Han and the Blue North King had finally clashed. A terrifying gust of wind whistled. This was a clash of the strongest power of the Celestial Realm. Heavenly Venerable tier had surpassed the range of regulations, so it was not counted. Boundless light dazzled, and everyone felt like they had become blind. They could not see anything clearly, but their ears were filled with a banging cacophony, showing just how terrifying the clash was now. But after only a while, even their ears had lost hearing, and they could no longer hear anything. Because this commotion was too terrifying, and had surpassed the limits that they could bear. Everyone was bleeding from their 7 apertures, and felt their hearts beat like a drum, almost exploding. Most people only felt discomfort, but there were also a limited few that showed expressions of indescribable shock. A celestial king had already moved, so shouldn't Ling Han have been defeated in an instant? Whether it was being captured alive or being killed, it definitely was just the matter of a single movement, yet now the ruckus was not ending. The battle was still continuing, so what did that signify? The Blue North King had yet to defeat Ling Han. How is this possible? That was just a mere ascending origin tier, and even if he held the status of a 5-star Grandmaster, and that celestial kings would have to be polite and respectful, it definitely did not mean that his strength was really capable of making him an equal of a celestial king. At least 15 minutes later, everyone felt that frightening pressure had vanished, and their visibility was also slowly recovering. Their lost hearing was also improving. The plumes of dust that filled the skies dispersed, revealing 2 figures that were facing each other, arms crossed behind their backs. The Blue North King, as well as Ling Han, gasped. When they saw this, everyone was dumbfounded, and even wanted to grab their heads with both hands, screaming that this was impossible. For an ascending origin tier to stand against a celestial king was absolutely ridiculous. This was something that was unthinkable even in dreams, yet had taken place in reality now. Who could believe their eyes? My eyes must have blurred. This can't possibly happen. It's fake. It's all fake. After a short moment of silence, a tsunami wave of noise arose. Everyone was rendered speechless and seemed like they were hoping that someone could tell them that all this was just a dream. The red-clothed woman was dumbfounded. She had actually offended this kind of elite? If Ling Han had really wanted to kill her, then what could even the Blue North King have done? The former was not afraid at all. Only now did Shun Hao know what exactly Ling Han had meant by saying that they were prepared. His strength was powerful enough to match a celestial king, so he was naturally unafraid. Your strength is inconceivably powerful, Blue North King said, his tone still calm, but carrying a strong feeling of curiosity. Chapter 24-22, Great Attack of the Celestial King. Chapter 24-22, Great Attack of the Celestial King. The others only knew that Ling Han was overwhelmingly strong and could match a celestial king. Yet the Blue North King knew that while Ling Han was indeed strong, there was still a very large gap between his battle prowess and his own. Ling Han's battle prowess had just barely touched the line of the first heaven celestial king, while the Blue North King had cultivated for a great many years on first heaven. By now, he was already in late-stage first heaven, so his battle prowess naturally far exceeded the former. Ling Han also had his own judgment. The Blue North King's vitality index was around 5,400 points, considerably higher than his, but with his tough physique, he was completely capable of clashing with him. Hee, I just had a stroke of unusual luck, Ling Han stated evenly. The Blue North King was naturally not going to believe him. What kind of unusual luck could allow an ascending origin tier to possess strength that matched a celestial king? Realization dawned on him. You must be one of the rumored monarch stars and consumed crimson demonic earth. That is why you have this kind of battle prowess. The vitality index of a monarch star was around 4,500, and after consuming crimson demonic earth, this could soar directly to 4,700. If he continued to consume it further, uncaring of the after effects, the vitality index could be boosted to a further level, reaching around 4,800 points. Even though this had not reached Celestial King tier level, there wouldn't be as large a gap anymore, after all. This was the possibility that was closest to the truth that the Blue North King could think of. He was only a first heaven celestial king, after all. He was not qualified at all to get in contact with that unique power of the heaven and earth yet, even if there was a considerable amount of crimson demonic earth here. Consuming crimson demonic earth would have completely no effect on a celestial king, and this was set by the heaven and earth. Ling Han shrugged. Whatever you think. He paused. If you want to fight, I can oblige. If not, then don't keep me from my affairs either. These words were extremely impolite. He was practically saying, if we're not going to fight, then just get lost. The Blue North King's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Since he had become a celestial king, second heaven, or even third heaven celestial kings had not spoken to him in such a tone. His killing intent rose as he glared fixedly at Ling Han. His index finger moved slightly. The thought of killing this young prodigy rose up in his mind and could not be dismissed. Youth, you are too arrogant, he declared menacingly. Ling Han laughed and rolled the muscles of his neck, shrugging. If you want to fight, let's get on with it. Don't blabber nonsense. His body art was extremely terrifying. With his movement, it was like a great beast of the primitive age had revived. The air reverberated, waves of power surging in all directions. Pong, pong, pong. Wherever the power waves surged past, everyone stumbled as if they were drunk, and quite a number had already flopped onto the ground. It should be known that all those that could make their way here had to be at the ascending origin tier. Only now did everyone have a deeper understanding. Ling Han, indeed, had strength that could match a celestial king. This was too inconceivable. He had just started on the celestial path and already possessed celestial king tier power. Then what about once he formed a celestial seed and truly set foot in the celestial king tier? Just how powerful would he be then? Just thinking about this possibility caused everyone's breathing to become heavy. This man had started an era and set a record that might be one that no one would ever be able to break. The Blue North King humphed, his hands forming claws and flickering with a golden sheen. He had succeeded Tao through cultivating the regulations of metal and was also connected with the regulations of metal. It meant that he was a part of the regulations of metal. When he moved, endless regulations of metal rushed towards and entwined around him, turning into 99 golden dragons, impressively powerful and exhibiting fully the bearing of a celestial king. All celestial kings could use regulations per se, but the higher their cultivation level, the more regulations they could draw on, and, naturally, the greater their battle prowess would be. And regulations were the manifestation of the power of heaven and earth, a kind of law that represented the will of the heaven and earth. The rage of a celestial king would be equivalent to the raging of the heaven and earth, which was unbelievably frightening. Everyone was sprawled out on the ground, but as long as they had formed a sliver of celestial seed, they would be able to hold up against this kind of pressure. Ling Han was intrigued. Though he had slaughtered celestial kings before, that was all through lending the power of an external force. It was either the power of heaven and earth of the neutral zone or the unleashed might of the Black Tower. This time, would he be able to slaughter a celestial king with his own power? The Blue North King moved, striking out with a claw. It enlarged endlessly, and it was as if this golden light was the only thing that remained in the realm. Ling Han released a battle cry and used fists of fury once more. Incredibly aggressive, he clashed head-on with the Blue North King, not backing down in the slightest. The two of them fought fiercely, from the ground all the way to the air. The people below them could only see endless lights exploding and flashing, as well as loud noises endlessly blasting like thunder. Some people wanted to soar into the air and watch from close quarters, but discovered that they could not rise into the air at all, because the paramount pressure belonging to Ling Han and the Blue North King filled their surroundings. If they rose into the air, they would sustain severe injury, and if they rose further, that would be opposing a celestial king, and that naturally would result in their complete destruction. In the skies, Ling Han used all the power at his disposal, fighting to his heart's content. Celestial kings were superior in terms of regulations. Hence, the Blue North King could extract a great amount of regulations of metal and fill the area completely. Ling Han could not draw on any kind of regulations at all, and though he had a celestial physique and could use the flow of time, he, too, could completely exhaust his stores without the replenishment from the power of heaven and earth. Thus, in terms of regulations, Ling Han was being completely suppressed, but this was all right. In the first place, he did not fight by depending on the power of regulation. On the contrary, without the disturbance of regulations, he could focus his full attention on body art. Every punch and kick was the show of might of his physical power, allowing him to better use this kind of power. The longer he fought, the stronger he became. At times, he would use his own injuries to exchange for injuring his opponent. His style of fighting was completely unreasonable. It could not be helped. His physique was too tough. At the ordinary level of defense, it would equivalent to the lowest tier of the Celestial King tier, and once he actively channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll, his defense could be further boosted madly, being completely capable of bearing up against the barrage of attacks from a Celestial King. Even the Blue North King was feeling a headache. He had never seen an opponent like this. The latter clearly had Celestial King tier battle prowess, yet used his own injuries to exchange for injuring his opponent and fought in such a self-destructive manner. And what made him feel even more helpless was how Ling Han's defense was extremely tough, completely capable of bearing his attacks head-on. So whenever he moved, he would be wary and dared not advance too deeply. What if Ling Han managed to take the chance to just mess around? Then, there really was a possibility that he would be injured. For a Celestial King to be wounded by an ascending origin tier, just what kind of extreme humiliation was that? And once he was wary when he attacked, it was even harder for the Blue North King to suppress Ling Han. He could not resolve the situation even after a long time, and the battle was still in a deadlock. At the beginning, the Blue North King had still been thinking that Ling Han had consumed the Crimson Demonic Earth, and there was no way he could maintain this state constantly. But after 2 hours of fighting, Ling Han was still energized and lively, and that was when he realized that something was off. He was a little annoyed. After fighting for so long, he actually still hadn't managed to suppress Ling Han. This was really embarrassing for him. Just how could this brat be so strong? The Blue North King's heart was filled with curiosity. By now, he could be certain that Ling Han had not consumed the Crimson Demonic Earth, but was rather using a different method to make his battle prowess leap. This caused his heart to throb wildly as a strong, covetous desire rose up in him. He would definitely get hold of this secret technique, and it would definitely increase his strength countless times over. It was not impossible for him to suppress a second Heaven Celestial King, or match a third Heaven Celestial King. Humph! Blue North King's figure paused slightly. A celestial tree manifested behind him. He muttered a chant, and a golden moon rose up from the top of the tree, emanating thousands of golden lights and shadows. Ling Han was surprised. He discovered that his body seemed to have frozen, and he could not move the slightest muscle. Blue North King had released a powerful move. Chapter 24-23, Show of Might of the Divine Demon Sword. Chapter 24-23, Show of Might of the Divine Demon Sword. Ling Han concentrated and looked. The golden moonlight was completely filled with particles, and they were all golden in color. It was these golden particles that caused the moonlight to turn golden. He had a dawning realization. It should be these golden particles as well that rendered him incapable of movement. The Blue North King cultivated the regulations of metal and had presently turned this entire area into a metal-aligned one. Being within this area, Ling Han naturally could not move. This was a great move and had to be powerful. The Blue North King naturally would not waste this kind of opportunity. He pounced and tapped out with a finger. A golden light shot out, turning into a sharp sword that stabbed out towards Ling Han's forehead, intending to pierce through his mind itself. Ling Han was unafraid, a smile appearing at the corners of his lips. The indestructible heaven scroll activated, and seals suddenly appeared on his body one after another, exuding a supreme aura that surpassed regulations. Pong! The sharp sword formed by the golden light stabbed Ling Han's forehead, creating an endless brilliance and forcing Ling Han to retreat continuously, yet it could not wound him in the slightest. Even a celestial king could not possibly maintain the channeling of such a great move continuously. The golden moonlight that filled the skies very soon disappeared, and Ling Han immediately recovered his mobility. Immediately, he repaid the Blue North King with a punch of his own. Wong! Immediately, a golden shield formed in front of the Blue North King, blocking this strike from Ling Han. However, a deep fist imprint was left behind on the shield. The shield trembled and turned into golden sand before disappearing. The Blue North King's hair fluttered and turned into thousands of sharp arrows that shot forwards. Ling Han could not possibly channel the indestructible heaven scroll continuously either. Instantly, he was pierced by the arrows, his physique tearing apart, and celestial blood gushed out. Thankfully, the arrows did not penetrate too deeply and could not cause too much damage to him. It could not be helped. In terms of battle prowess, it was indeed the Blue North King that was superior. But whether it was Blue North King or the spectators below, they could only watch in shock. A celestial king had already released a great move, and it had actually only managed to wound Ling Han slightly. Who would not be completely speechless and feeling helpless at this? Ling Han broke into a grin. Since you have used a great move, I'll show you one of mine. His right hand shook, and the divine demon sword was already summoned. Since the Black Tower could no longer be used, he had stowed the divine demon sword to be nurtured within his own body. Though he presently already possessed a heavenly venerate tool that was still someone else's, after all, Ling Han planned to forge a precious tool of his own. Hence, the divine demon sword had naturally become his first choice. Furthermore, only the divine demon sword could break through the level of celestial tool and be used by a heavenly venerate. He was sure that the divine demon sword would become even sharper after bathing in celestial king blood. Divine metal? The Blue North King's eyes widened slightly, revealing a hint of seriousness. But at the same time, there was also delight and a hint of jealousy. Because even he did not possess a celestial tool, yet a mere ascending origin tier actually had it, which made him, a great celestial king, feel emotionally unbalanced. But that was fine. As long as he killed Ling Han and plucked his soul, he would be able to obtain the secret of how the latter could be so unusually strong, and the celestial tool would naturally fall into his hands as well. I will take you down. The Blue North King moved, and a golden palm descended like a great mountain. Ling Han did not answer. His sword swept out, the sword chi shattering the heavens. His own battle prowess could not pose too much of a threat to the Blue North King, but it was a completely different story if he had a celestial tool in hand. This is just like how a 7-year-old kid would only be thrashed if he were to get into a fight with an adult. Even if the former managed to strike his opponent, it would not hurt much, either. But what if this kid grasped a sharp sword in his hand then? Then even an adult would have to be wary and careful. Once he was touched by the sharp sword, his skin would definitely be broken, and he would bleed. If his vital points were hit, it was not impossible for him to even die. The Blue North King was indeed extremely wary, and could only wrap regulations around his hand to resist the sword chi. But to actually clash head-on with a celestial tool with bare hands? That was a completely impossible feat, and even a celestial king would be dismembered. With sword in hand, Ling Han had actually turned the situation completely on its head. Even in a clash with a celestial king, he was not at a disadvantage either. In fact, it seemed like he would be turning around to suppress the latter instead. Everyone was once again stunned and dazed. Being capable of barely matching a celestial king was already a very inconceivable feat. What more when he looked like he would be turning around to beat down on the celestial king instead? Wasn't this just going to make their eyes pop out in shock? Ling Han released a battle cry, his right hand wielding the sword and using the heaven-destroying 9 swords, while his left hand curled into a fist and was still using fists of fury. The greatest eternity, everlasting physique was channeled. He exerted time acceleration effects on himself, and his speed began to burst madly. Even an ascending origin tier could not possibly catch a trace of him. This caused those ascending origin tiers to cower. If Ling Han wanted to kill them, he would only need to use extreme speed, and a casual sword strike would be enough to behead them. After all, even a celestial king did not dare to face this head-on, so wouldn't an ascending origin tier die with just a single strike? The red-clothed woman and the others were all trembling. It was they that had begged and pleaded, so the Blue North King had agreed to help them. But if the Blue North King was defeated or even severely wounded because of this, they would definitely have to bear the endless fury of the Blue North King in the future. How could Ling Han be this strong? How could he be this powerful? Was there any justice left in this world? The more Ling Han fought, the more proficient he became. A thought suddenly occurred to him. He took out a bit of crimson demonic earth with his left hand and rubbed it on the divine demon sword. Since a weapon that was infused with crimson demonic earth could show even greater might, then would it have any effect on the divine demon sword? Unfortunately, the divine demon sword was still the same and did not surge with greater power. The Blue North King did get a scare, however. He had thought Ling Han was going to unleash some great move, yet it was just a false alarm. He couldn't help but become angry and embarrassed. Someone as strong as a celestial king had actually gotten a scare from an ascending origin tier. How could he bear that? He declared coldly, "Crimson demonic earth has no effect on celestial king tier power. You are thinking too much." Ling Han gave an "oh." So that was the case. No wonder he did not see the Blue North King using any crimson demonic earth. It was not because the latter cared for his own reputation, but that it would have no effect at all. Then let's try another method. Ling Han stretched out a hand and took something out again. His left hand now held that dimension scroll. Then, he extracted the energy within and poured it into the divine demon sword. Instantly, a clap of thunder suddenly sounded. Dark clouds spread out densely, with terrifying lightning flashing in their depths. It was like the heavens were raging. The moment this heavenly tribulation took form, it would be a heavenly venerate tribulation, to say nothing of how the others were panicking and anxious to the extreme. Even the Blue North King was extremely astonished. The extent of terror of this heavenly tribulation had already far surpassed his level, and he would not even dare to imagine it. Was it an 8th heaven tribulation? Or a 9th heaven tribulation? This was caused by Ling Han? As a mere ascending origin tier, how could he possibly summon a heavenly tribulation as he pleased? And such a frightening great heavenly tribulation at that. Thankfully, Ling Han did not dare act rashly, either. If the heavenly venerate tribulation was really allowed to take form, he himself would be the first to be implicated. He hurriedly stopped extracting the energy, and the heavenly tribulation in the skies also stopped storing up power, but the dark clouds were not dispersing at all. At any moment, it was possible that a bolt of lightning would strike. Z. The divine demon sword was flickering with terrifying brilliance, exuding paramount pressure. Even the blade itself was trembling, as if it was about to shatter. Void particle energy, one of the 6 great source powers of the Genesis world, heavenly venerable tier, and the divine demon sword was presently only a celestial tool. Sustaining this kind of terrifying power, it naturally was slightly unable to bear up. Ling Han laughed, brandishing the divine demon sword, and charged out again. Shio! A brilliant light was slashed out. This was not just the divine demon sword's own sharp sword chi, but also carried a sliver of void particle energy. How terrifying! There were 9 heavens in the Celestial King tier, and every single step forwards was as difficult as ascending the heavens. The gap among even 9th heaven Celestial Kings was extremely great. What more when void particle energy was at the heavenly venerable tier? Chapter 24-24, The Celestial King Retreats in Defeat. Chapter 24-24, The Celestial King Retreats in Defeat. No matter how strong the Blue North King was, he was still just a 1st heaven Celestial King, and was worlds apart from heavenly venerable tier. How could he possibly match such ferocious might? His right arm suddenly stretched out, and a shield immediately formed in front of him. Pong! The sword chi sliced the shield, and with a loud, crisp noise, the shield was immediately shattered. The sword chi continued on its original course, practically undeterred. The Blue North King was stunned. He had not thought that mere sword chi would have such frightening destructive power. The defense that he had laid down might as well have been completely useless. He hurriedly turned his head to the side and dodged the sword chi. Shwa! The sword chi swept past, and a few strands of hair quietly drifted downwards. Ling Han had actually managed to slice a few hairs from the Blue North King's head. When the spectators below saw this, they felt a chill rise up from their limbs as numbness spread all over their scalps. Heavens, that was a celestial king. Yet Ling Han actually managed to cut off a few strands of his hair. Though it was just a few strands, a celestial king had a lofty, noble standing, and was an invincible god of war in everyone's eyes. Yet a few strands of his hair had actually been cut with a single sword strike. How could they believe this? This was heaven-defying. This was really heaven-defying. The Blue North King's expression was ice-cold. Not the slightest bit of anger could be seen from his expression. Only extreme calmness remained in his expression. What person that could become a celestial king did not have a willpower of iron? This power is very astounding, he said sincerely. Being capable of cutting a few strands of hair from his head was really hard to imagine. He was a celestial king, and had the grace to admit this fact. Ling Han laughed and waved his sword. You're not going to tell me now that you won't fight, right? I have never backed down from a battle, the Blue North King declared proudly. In a battle of equals, he had never feared anyone. Then come battle. Ling Han charged out. The divine demon sword had been instilled with void particle energy and would be able to burst out with frightening might for a short time, so he was confident that he would be able to defeat even a celestial king. The Blue North King had witnessed the might of the divine demon sword previously and did not dare to face it head-on at all. After he retreated, he delivered a series of palm strikes, sending out palm strikes that were as massive as mountains as they descended on Ling Han. Ling Han casually blasted out sword chi. Pong, pong, pong. When every flash of sword chi sliced into a massive palm, the palm would immediately crumble. It could not withstand even a single blow. He advanced deeply and set off in hot pursuit of the Blue North King. The people below were all practically passing out from watching this. Just who exactly was the Celestial King here? How was it that it was an ascending origin tier was attacking a Celestial King? Their view on life was about to collapse. Actually, Ling Han had stronger trump cards which he had not played yet, and that was the Heaven and Earth origin stars. It could kill even low-tier Celestial Kings. But since he had the upper hand now, he naturally would not be willing to waste such a deadly weapon. After all, he did not have many Heaven and Earth origin stars on him, either. The Blue North King roared out continuously, launching ultimate moves repeatedly, but in front of the Divine Demon Sword, any technique was only wasted effort. On the other hand, it was now Ling Han that could pose a serious threat to him, yet he could do nothing to Ling Han. With his battle prowess, if he wanted to cause serious injury to Ling Han, he would have to attack him a few hundred times in succession at least, but how could this be possibly done? After fighting another 3 days, the Blue North King finally revealed fear. Ling Han's stamina was unending, and though the power of the Divine Demon Sword was close to exhaustion, it could gain endless replenishment, and he could not find a hole to penetrate through it all. Furthermore, under Ling Han's continuous attacks, he had also been struck quite a number of times by the sword chi, so he was now covered with wounds, Celestial King blood spurting everywhere. Don't let it go to waste. Ling Han moved and gathered the blood that spilled from the Blue North King. Though this was not Celestial King blood essence, it was still extremely valuable, and was not too inferior as compared to a Celestial King tier Great Herb. The Blue North King's face was livid with fury. You gather my blood right in front of me. Is there anyone else like you? Those watching below were also speechless. What kind of person was this? To do something so despicable, was he planning to become deadly enemies with the Blue North King? Good, good, good. The Blue North King's whole body was trembling. He bounced back in retreat, and endless golden light surged out, forming golden mountains in front of him which blocked the sword chi one after another. He gritted his teeth, then actually turned and left. He had abandoned even his pride as a Celestial King. He understood that if things went on in this manner, he would still be unable to kill Ling Han. Instead, it would place himself in a dangerous position. Then, he might as well cease the battle. Of course, he was definitely not going to let this go. Xiao, he left in a flurry of divine light that filled the skies and was instantly gone from sight. This, everyone could not speak. A Celestial King had actually been forced to flee. He had fled. Who would have believed this? Even if they saw it with their own eyes, it felt like they were dreaming. If they heard others speak of this, they would definitely think that this was an extremely ridiculous joke. Ling Han withdrew his sword and stood, making no attempt to pursue. Firstly, his goal was the celestial fruits, and secondly, he would not be able to catch up. His battle prowess was actually slightly weaker than that of the Celestial King tier, but the Divine Demon Sword was really too powerful now, and that was why he had attained such glorious accomplishments. Otherwise, it should be him that could not do anything against the Blue North King, though the Blue North King would not be able to kill him either. Husband. Ling Han, Hun Yo, and the other women all pounced. Though Ling Han had even killed Celestial Kings previously, for their own safety, they had long since entered into the Black Tower, and had not witnessed it themselves. Furthermore, it was a display of Ling Han's true strength this time, which was even rarer and more valuable, and they were extremely excited at this. Ling Han smiled slightly. All right, let's harvest the fruits. The 3 women all nodded. This was a familiar path for the 4 of them. Very quickly, they charged to the mountaintop, then climbed the cliff, and arrived at the side of the celestial tree. Ling Han stretched out his hand first, and at the same time prepared himself to intercept. If this celestial tree was going to flee, he would move decisively, and snatched the celestial fruits. The celestial tree shook gently, and endless celestial chi rose up in an extremely beautiful display. Pa! A celestial fruit automatically left the tree and fell into Ling Han's hand. When the celestial fruit fell into the hands of a living being, he would have to consume it as soon as possible, or it had to be concocted into a celestial king pill. Otherwise, it would soon evaporate into the heaven and earth. Ling Han immediately consumed the fruit. He might not need the celestial seed to sprout and grow, but he could study the celestial seed in his mind and grasp the Tao of Celestial King Tyr in advance. In fact, he was going to gather the essence of a great many celestial seeds and form the most perfect celestial seed. An invincible seed. He stepped out of the way, and the Empress took his place. The Empress stretched out her hand, her expression clearly bearing the domineering air that said, "If you dare not give one to me, I'll beat you till you burst." The celestial tree shuddered slightly, and another fruit fell. The Empress grabbed it, consuming it directly. Hunyo took her place. She giggled. "Stupid tree, if your fruits taste bad, Nyo will burn you." The celestial tree shook again, as if it was expressing its displeasure. However, another fruit still fell. Hunyo got hold of it and consumed it in a few chews. This taste was quite good, and the little girl's eyes immediately lit up. She stretched out her hand and demanded another. Nyo still wants more. Those beneath them were all watching with both envy and speechlessness. There was no benefit to be gained even with more celestial seeds. Have you gotten addicted to the taste? The celestial tree was not willing to give a second fruit, so Hunyo could only retreat gloomily. Bewitching Maiden Ro took her place. However, when the bewitching Maiden Ro stepped forwards, the celestial tree shook, and a fruit only dropped down after a very long time, as if it was hesitating whether or not to give a fruit. This should be because the bewitching Maiden Ro's performance was slightly subpar and had not completely won the approval of the celestial tree. However, for better or worse, she was not disappointed. At this time, Ling Han stretched out a hand again. Naturally, there was no reason that a celestial fruit should go to waste. Chapter 24-25. Ransacking the Place of a Celestial King. Chapter 24-25. Ransacking the Place of a Celestial King. The celestial tree trembled lightly and did not drop down another celestial fruit. It seemed to be saying that Ling Han had already obtained a celestial fruit, and no benefits would be gained from getting another. It was not willing to surrender another. Ling Han smiled and said, "I will concoct it into a celestial king pill, and will definitely not waste it." When these words fell, the celestial tree shuddered again, and then did something that Ling Han had not foreseen. It uprooted itself, and then a few thick roots coiled together, as if they had formed into a few legs. Then, it ran off in a flash. This speed was astonishingly fast. In just a few steps, it had already fled into the distance. Though Ling Han had already prepared himself to intercept, the moment the celestial tree moved, he found out why even the Blue North King had not interfered. It could not be stopped. It was really too fast. The celestial tree did not have very great battle prowess, nor did it have strong defense, but this speed was definitely supreme to all celestial kings. Perhaps only a fifth heaven celestial king and above could successfully intercept it. On the celestial path, this naturally could not possibly happen. There weren't even any fourth heaven celestial kings here. What more fifth heaven celestial kings? Ling Han sighed and could only settle for looking for the next celestial tree. "Let's go." They descended from the cliff, and everyone was looking at Ling Han with extremely reverent gazes. This was a guy that could force even a celestial king into fleeing, and he himself hadn't even become a celestial king yet. The moment he set foot in this cultivation level, just how strong would his battle prowess be? The strongest celestial king in history? Ling Han swept a glance over them. Minor characters like the red-clothed woman and the others had long since fled. Clearly, they feared that Ling Han would be calling them to account. Even a celestial king had fled, so what were they worth? Let's go to Blue North City. Since they had already feuded with the Blue North King, there was naturally no need to be reserved any longer. Ling Han brought the three women with him to Blue North City, barged directly into the Celestial King Manor, and then ransacked the entire manor. However, the Blue North King had only ascended Dao for just several billion years and had too many descendants. Hence, his wealth was not very great. So as Ling Han and the others ransacked his abode, they were mumbling complaints that this Celestial King was really too poor. If the Blue North King heard this, he would probably be coughing up blood. You guys have gone too far, haven't you? This Celestial King did not return to his manor, and it was unknown where he had gone. Ling Han did not care, either. At worst, they could have another battle. Just how big was Blue North City? The news of the Celestial King Manor being ransacked immediately spread through the entire city, and everyone was gaping with shock. They had not imagined that outsiders would actually be so ferocious to actually beat a Celestial King into fleeing. There were also many people who did not believe it and ran to the Celestial King Manor. It was only when they discovered that all the guards had fled that they finally believed it. After their ransacking, Ling Han and his group continued on their journey. The celestial path would only open once every 10 billion years. This was a set arrangement of the heaven and earth. Then, it was extremely possible that there were many celestial trees here that would be blooming flowers and bearing fruits which would ripen at the same time. Thus, Ling Han decided to set out quickly. Otherwise, those like Ji Wuming were completely qualified to obtain the celestial seed with the help of Crimson Demonic Earth. If he did not rush, it was probable that he would end up with nothing. They set out on their way. While Ling Han and his group nurtured the celestial seed, they felt the change from the ascending origin tier to celestial king tier. After consuming the celestial fruit, there was only a single imprint, and this was the true celestial seed. If one used his own will to nurture it, communicating with great Tao, it would sprout and ultimately grow into a celestial tree. Ling Han and the others all had more ambitious pursuits and had no plans of having this imprint turn into a celestial seed. They merely placed it in their minds and carefully observed it. Because they had ransacked the residence of the Blue North King, they were now falling behind other outsiders. Over a dozen days later, they arrived at the next city, and there was similarly a celestial king overseeing this city. Ling Han made his inquiries first and discovered that there was no celestial tree here. Hence, they did not stop over and merely continued their journey. They simply hired a carriage and took their journey slowly and easily. In any case, they had a ride, and they themselves could comprehend inside the carriage. A naturally complete celestial seed contained too many secrets. Though it was only a mark, it could manifest into countless possibilities. If we can fully comprehend the secrets of this celestial seed, we may be able to comprehend the secrets of the celestial king tier in advance, and would be able to use celestial king tier power to a certain extent, Ling Han said. The three women all nodded. This mark was naturally born from the heaven and earth, and contained the secrets of becoming a celestial king. Only if they truly comprehended the secrets within would they possibly be able to turn the mark into a celestial seed, in which it would grow and mature. And the key of all this was actually at the first step, comprehending the secret of the celestial king tier, and then using the celestial seed to communicate with the heaven and earth and extract the essence of regulations. They all cultivated carefully. Without a celestial seed, the celestial king tier seemed unrealistic and could not be touched at all. But now that they had a celestial seed, they could finally touch the threshold of the celestial king tier, though it was only the threshold, and there was still a long stretch for them to go. Day after day passed, and they felt that there was a certain level of increase to their strength. For Ling Han, this kind of increase wasn't actually of much help to raising his full battle prowess, because without becoming a celestial king, his vitality index in terms of regulations could never break through to 5,000 points. It was still his body art that was stronger. The four of them had reached an agreement. There should still be a transition stage between the celestial king tier and ascending origin tier, and this could be termed pseudo-celestial king tier. The strength of a pseudo-celestial king was extremely close to celestial king tier, but could not truly touch that threshold, because once vitality index reached 5,000 points, that would be the celestial king tier. A few months later, they arrived in a new city. A piece of explosive news was heard here. A complete celestial seed had appeared. It was in the depths of an abandoned garden. From afar, a celestial herb could be glimpsed, and it bore a single celestial fruit. Its fragrance could be smelled from a range of 50 kilometers, and a great many people were cultivating outside the garden, absorbing the celestial seed shards within the fruity fragrance, and ultimately pieced out a single celestial seed. According to legends, the closer one got to the heart of the celestial path, the closer to flawlessness and perfection the celestial seed that appeared would be. Ling Han and his group immediately set out, journeying towards that garden. However, after traveling 3 days, the path ahead of them was cut off. The mountain path was steep and rocky, and there was a mysterious power flowing around, which stopped the progress of carriages. Hence, Ling Han told the coachman to wait there, while he and the 3 women continued onwards. Little Terror was looking listless. Ever since coming to the celestial path, its condition had not been very good. It was possible that this place was too close to the core of the celestial realm, and it, as a battle beast of the foreign realm, was feeling even greater repression. The 4 of them walked for over half a day's time and arrived at the waist of the mountain. The way ahead of them suddenly opened up to a wide panorama, revealing a stretch of ruins that occupied an astonishing surface area. This should have been a beautiful sacred palace before, but most of the structures were already destroyed now, leaving behind remains of walls that were only half the height of an adult and stone pillars that had fallen onto the ground. However, it could still be seen how majestic and austere it had once been. Through these broken remains of the walls, it could be seen that there was a garden in the deepest corners of the palace courtyard. That place was already barren, but there was still a plant that was completely green like jade growing there. Its leaves looked like swords, with a dense purple mist spreading from it. From the first look, they knew that it was extraordinary. And at the very top of this plant, there was a crimson fruit. This was even more extraordinary, as it was actually entwined in lightning, and this kind of lightning caused a powerful fright to rise up in their hearts even when they were looking at it from such a far distance. It was like they were faced with a heavenly tribulation. Lightning-aligned celestial seed. Ling Han and the others all concluded. Celestial seeds also had varying elemental alignments. For example, the celestial seed they had previously obtained was wood-aligned, and it should be that a single celestial tree or celestial herb could only bear celestial seeds of the same elemental alignment. Chapter 24-26, Scene of Ruins. Chapter 24-26, Scene of Ruins. When Ling Han looked around, there really were masses of people here. There were many heads of black hair as far as the eye could see. Of course, there were also oddities, people who had red, green, golden, or even other more outrageous colors of hair. These were mostly wild beasts taken human form. Though they now had human form, they were still different in the end. At present, everyone was extremely silent and were seated around that ruined garden, as if there was a celestial king there that was presently passing on his teachings and teaching them supreme knowledge. No one attempted to barge into the garden and pluck the celestial fruit. They seemed unusually well behaved. Ling Han glanced at the 3 women and nodded. "Let's go." The 4 of them strode forwards. They already possessed the mark of a celestial seed, and as they comprehended, their strength had increased and was heading towards the level of pseudo-celestial king tier. Now, they really feared no one. They were just about to pass the others when someone in front of them immediately shouted, "Don't you know the rules?" Ling Han smiled. "There are rules." "Of course," that person declared proudly. "Without enough strength, you would not be qualified to even enter here. Do you see that side? Just stay there." He pointed at a corner. Ling Han looked over. That was already outside of the garden, and there were a great many people seated there too. However, there was clearly still a lot of empty space in the garden, yet they did not take another step further. Clearly, those were all weaker people, and that was why they could only stay outside. The fruity fragrance they could absorb there would naturally be considerably weaker. Ling Han turned back around and smilingly said, "I am very strong." "Pooh," that person scoffed. He had never seen such a shameless person that would actually praise himself. "Greetings, Grandmaster Ling." Their conversation had alerted those in the area, and when an outsider spotted Ling Han, he hurriedly stood up and bowed towards him respectfully. The reverence and fanaticism in his expression was practically about to spill over. Ling Han nodded very casually. "What is your name?" "I am Fu Dong," the person quickly replied in excitement. Though he was only an ascending origin tier, and could also advance into Celestial King tier himself, in front of Ling Han, he was willing to play the role of a lackey. It could not be helped. Not only was Ling Han a 5-star Grandmaster, his own battle prowess was even more terrifying. In the future, he would definitely become the strongest Celestial King, or at least one of the strongest. Ling Han gave an "oh" and stated smilingly, "Brother Fu?" Fu Dong was even more excited. Who said that Ling Han was not an easy person to deal with? He's very polite. As for those that spread the gossip, they were just jealous. When the person from earlier saw this, his expression involuntarily changed to shock. He was a local resident of the Celestial Path, and naturally would not recognize or know of Ling Han. Yet he knew Fu Dong because the latter had fought his way in with true strength, and had proven that he had the right to stay here and cultivate. But this kind of elite was actually so humble and modest in front of Ling Han, looking completely like he was willing to become a subordinate to him. This was enough proof of just how powerful Ling Han's strength was. He couldn't help but feel a sense of lingering fear. If he and Ling Han really came to blows, he would definitely be seeking his own humiliation. He hurriedly lowered his head and became a coward. "Hey, why are you sticking your head in the ground?" Nyo asked delicately. He actually dared to look down on Nyo's Ling Han. Nyo expresses that Nyo is very angry and is going to hit him when he is down. That person did not even dare to say a single word, and only pretended like he had not heard anything. Though this was very embarrassing, it was still much better than being pummeled in public. Ling Han merely smiled and did not take it to heart. He just looked at that jade-green celestial tree and the majestic mist of purple that was rising from it, which made it look extremely noble. He asked Fu Dong about the origins of this celestial tree, but the latter was not sure, either. He had just arrived a month earlier himself, and only knew that the depths of this garden were extremely dangerous. Not one person had managed to barge their way in. "Do you see those damaged weapons there?" Fu Dong pointed at a few weapons that were scattered all around the celestial tree. They were a sword, a saber, a spear, and a halberd, and they were stabbed into the ground. However, every single weapon was already damaged, and their previous glory was concealed. As long as one gets too near, these weapons would show their might, which is very frightening. Fu Dong felt a sense of lingering fear, his face pale. "I have seen it with my own eyes." One person was very confident in his own strength and wanted to forcefully barge in. As a result, that damaged saber automatically slashed out, its divine light dazzling over 5,000 kilometers, and directly cut that person so badly that both his form and spirit were destroyed. Ling Han nodded. Without protection that was strong enough, this celestial tree would not last until his arrival. "I'll try it out," Ling Han said to the 3 women. The 3 women all nodded. They knew that Ling Han's present strength was practically at the Celestial King tier, and added with the might of the divine demon sword, even a first heaven Celestial King had been chased off. This naturally qualified him to venture in. Fu Dong's expression was also feverish. He, too, was filled with confidence in Ling Han. He was one of the witnesses of the battle between Ling Han and the Blue North King. Though he had not seen much of it, with his strength, he had witnessed with his own eyes how the Blue North King had fled. Was that still not enough? The guy that had previously been scared out of his wits revealed a cold smirk. "He wants to barge in and pluck the fruit? You are just seeking death." Pong! He felt a sudden pain in his head and was already sprawled down onto the ground. He flew into a rage and hurriedly got back to his feet again. He turned and saw Nyo was clenching her little fist, glaring angrily at him. He was just about to flip out when a sudden chill rose up in his heart. Though he had been caught unawares, just how strong did she have to be able to strike him down with a single punch? With this in mind, his fury immediately subsided like floodwaters. He once again dipped his head and returned to being a coward. Ling Han was completely unconcerned about this kind of trifling matter. He merely stared ahead before striding forwards. His main goal was naturally to retrieve the celestial fruit, but the 4 broken weapons were also within his range of retrieval. Being capable of easily killing an ascending origin tier, these 4 weapons were probably forged from divine metal. Though they were now damaged, they still had powerful might. He was not interested in celestial tools, but divine metal could be swallowed by the divine demon sword, and it could continue its evolution. Another here to commit suicide? Hee, foolish outsider. He probably thinks that his strength is very great, yet has forgotten that this is the celestial path. As he passed, quite a number of people were sneering, but because they discovered that Ling Han was heading towards the celestial tree, they made no move to stop him. In any case, he would soon be killed, so why should they waste the effort? Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and a terrifying pressure spread out, instantly silencing all of them. These locals all exchanged looks, and they could see the shock and even fear in each other's expressions. How could there possibly be such a strong person in this world? They felt as if they had been glared at by a celestial king, and were almost scared out of their wits. Ling Han withdrew his gaze and continued onwards. Wang, he had just placed a foot within the 30-meter range of the celestial tree, and a dazzling light immediately rose up from the ground. Multiple veined patterns appeared on the ground, and when they joined together, they formed an extremely complex seal. Ling Han was surprised. He discovered that the environment around him had immediately changed. The ruined pillars were now complete and extremely tall. The broken walls were mended and looked like white jade. Beautiful and ornate designs covered them, emanating a divine air. Luxuriant flowers spread out like silk, leaves as green as jade. This looked like a paradise on earth. Ling Han knew that this was an image of this place from when it had been in its age of prosperity. Unfortunately, something had happened, and this place had become a place of ruins. He exerted the power of time and attempted to trace history. The scene changed, and the scene from eons ago truly appeared. Chapter 24-27, Fighting a Celestial Tool. Chapter 24-27, Fighting a Celestial Tool. Ling Han saw the scene of this palace at its age of greatest prosperity. There were beautiful palace maids walking in and out, soldiers bursting with exuberant youth patrolling back and forth, and finally, he saw a female celestial king, graceful, elegant, and enchanting. When he focused his eyes on her, this female celestial king actually looked back at him, a confused expression appearing on her face. What great strength! Ling Han was looking at her through time, and it actually managed to draw her notice. Crack! At this moment, a bolt of lightning descended, striking precisely on Ling Han's head. Instantly, everything was cut off. The jade walls, high pillars, and beautiful maids all vanished. That female celestial king was also gone from sight, and everything around returned to what Ling Han had originally seen: damaged, ruined, and miserable. Ling Han was stunned. Though that had not been a heavenly tribulation, it was also the heaven and earth interfering to cause a disturbance. He had glimpsed a powerful female celestial king through the ages, and had drawn the latter's notice. If this continued too long, it could possibly change history. Because that female celestial king was a ninth heaven celestial king. This kind of powerful being only needed a thought, and could make another choice on some important matter, which would very possibly affect history, change history, or even overturn history. The past could only be the past, and could not be changed. The consequences involved would be too wide-ranging. Hence, the heaven and earth interfered, forcefully interrupting the possible contact that he could have had with that female celestial king. Ling Han was now even more curious. Just what great matter was this female celestial king hesitating over at that time? One choice could take her left, and the other would take her right, and it was actually capable of influencing history. Never mind. He shook his head and continued onwards. Wang, ahead of him, that damaged sword revived. It was entirely entwined by lightning that crackled and popped. Then, it suddenly removed itself from the ground and floated in midair. The damaged sword did not immediately attack and only slanted and turned, the tip of the sword pointing straight at Ling Han. It seemed like it was issuing a warning. Don't come any closer, or I won't be reserved. Ling Han did not move either, and only felt the aura emanated by this damaged sword. It was very strong. It definitely had the might of the first Heaven Celestial King tier, but Ling Han had a feeling that this was not the full might of the damaged sword. Once it was fully unleashed, that definitely was not just first heaven. It might be able to insta-kill even a third Heaven Celestial King. This was very normal. At that time, the female Celestial King had been a ninth Heaven Celestial King. If these 4 celestial tools had all been her precious tools, their might naturally would not be limited to just the first heaven. Reaching 8th heaven or 9th heaven would be within reason as well. Ling Han shook his head internally. He had initially wanted to seize these 4 damaged weapons and use them to strengthen the divine demon sword, but from the look of things now, it would already be quite impressive if he managed to cross despite their resistance. No wonder even the Celestial King here had not retrieved these 4 celestial tools. If it was a celestial seed, that would be one thing. In any case, a Celestial King would not be able to use it either, but these were celestial tools. Even if one did not like this kind of shape, he could melt them down and reforge them again, forging them into a shape that he would like. It was not that he did not want to, it was that he could not do so. All around, everyone was no longer cultivating. Instead, their eyes were focused on Ling Han. The locals and outsiders had 2 completely different states of emotion. In the eyes of the locals, Ling Han was seeking his own death because even if it was a Celestial King that had come to retrieve the damaged celestial tools, he could still put up a fight at the beginning, but as the battle continued, the celestial tools would suddenly unleash their might and cause severe injury to that Celestial King. And this Celestial King who tried was a 3rd Heaven Celestial King at that. From then onwards, this place had become a forbidden land for Celestial Kings. If Ascending Origin tiers wanted to pluck the celestial fruits, they would definitely be killed by the celestial tools. Meanwhile, the outsiders were filled with confidence in Ling Han. This guy was someone that had even managed to chase a Celestial King away. Suppressing a few damaged celestial tools should be no issue for him. And amidst these differing emotions of the spectators, Ling Han took his first step. Instantly, the divine sword unleashed its might. It was like a king that had been challenged and suddenly sent out a strike. With a sweep of the blade, all heavens could be destroyed. Ling Han covered his whole body with power and brandished his fists in a counterattack with a roar. Pong! When his fists landed on the sword's blade, whong! A terrifying shock wave reverberated outwards. Pooh! All those who had been swept by the shock wave turned pale, hacking out mouthfuls of blood. Only Hu Niu and the Empress were exempted because they were already close to the height of pseudo-celestial king tier. They could just barely sustain the aftermath of a celestial king tier battle. However, bewitching Maiden Ro was coughing up blood as well, though she had not spluttered it out. In this exchange, Ling Han slid backwards over 90 meters, creating deep grooves in the ground with his feet, and the damaged sword had also been struck backwards several dozen meters. But even while it was still retreating, it made a comeback and shot back to its original spot. It was still exuding a frightening aura directly aimed at Ling Han. Ling Han looked down, and there was a trace of blood on his hand. Though the wound was not deep, there was still blood seeping out. The sword, on the other hand, was damaged, but that had been the case to begin with, and aside from that, it was completely unscratched. This was the first time that Ling Han had been at a disadvantage in terms of physique, though his opponent was only a weapon. He immediately made his judgment inwardly. In terms of battle prowess, the damaged sword that had not unleashed its might further was inferior to him, but the celestial tool was practically indestructible. Even a 9th Heaven Celestial King would find it very, very hard to damage it. In other words, the damaged sword was already invincible by nature. Hence, the best result would be Ling Han forcing the damaged sword into retreat, plucking the celestial fruits, and then successfully retreating himself. It was impossible for him to suppress the celestial tool because his strength was still inadequate. Even if he truly became a celestial king, the damaged sword could still unleash its might for the second time. That power would be even more frightening and could wound even a third heaven celestial king. There was no solution to this. Unless Ling Han could be even stronger and reach fourth heaven, fifth heaven, or an even higher cultivation level, the celestial tool would only be a celestial tool still. Furthermore, it was damaged, so its might would definitely be limited. Ling Han pulled himself together and walked forwards again. The damaged sword struck once more. A majestic flash of light slashed towards him, shaking the world. Ling Han shook his right hand, and the divine demon sword was summoned. Even if his present physique was extremely tough, he was still unqualified to clash head-on with a celestial tool. Ding, ding, ding. The divine demon sword and the damaged sword clashed endlessly, bursting with a boundless, dazzling light. Ling Han was incredibly aggressive. His left hand continued to use the flow of time, and it would affect either the damaged sword or himself. He had a complete grasp of the initiative and was beating down on the damaged sword. Everyone was staring dumbfoundedly, especially those locals. They had never seen such a powerful ascending origin tier before. All of them were gaping widely. It was like they had seen a ghost. Meanwhile, the outsiders appeared very proud. These locals actually dared to look down on them. Just see how powerful one of their prodigies could be. After striking at least 1,000 times, the glowing seals on the damaged sword suddenly dimmed. With a PU, it stabbed back into the ground and made no further move to attack. At first, Ling Han thought that the damaged sword was going to enter into a second state and explode with even greater might. He had already prepared himself to flee, but a good number of seconds had passed, and the damaged sword was still motionless. Pooh! Right at this moment, the damaged saber beside it flowed and was similarly entwined in lightning. This was a consecutive battle? Ling Han laughed. With the divine demon sword in hand, what did he have to fear? Let's battle it out. Xiao, the damaged saber also shot out of the ground and recovered by itself. It unleashed a frightening fighting spirit, the power of a celestial king blazing as it launched an offensive at Ling Han. Ling Han moved, sword in hand and completely unafraid. After fighting for around 1,000 exchanges, the damaged saber retreated and returned to the ground. The damaged spear took its place. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. This really was a consecutive battle. He released a battle cry and took the initiative to charge out. No need for so much trouble. All four of you can come at me together. Chapter 24-28, Fate. Chapter 24-28, Fate. Ling Han couldn't be bothered and directly challenged all four damaged weapons. This naturally was not because he was too arrogant, but rather that he was confident. As long as these four damaged weapons did not unleash their strongest blows, he was completely capable of matching their combined forces. Wong, Wong, Wong. The other three weapons also revived respectively. The damaged sword, saber, and halberd all floated in the air, forming a line of attack with the damaged spear as they unleashed an offensive on Ling Han. The joined forces of these four weapons would definitely surpass a simple layering of their might. Just think of the past. When the four celestial tools were still in their prime, what celestial king was capable of matching them? How had this place been destroyed? Could it have been the move of a heavenly venerate? Logically, a ninth heaven celestial king could not possibly appear on the celestial path. Then could it be that this was originally a part of the celestial realm, and it was only later that it was split from the former and swallowed by the celestial path? Or the celestial path itself was within the celestial realm, and there had been no such thing as opening or closing before. These thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. At present, he did not have the time to think too much, and could only release battle cries as he battled intensely with the four celestial tools. If the divine demon sword was taken into account as well, there were actually 5 celestial tools here, which was extremely shocking. Ling Han tried his best. He did not use the power of the Dimension Scroll, because he felt that his own power was enough to suppress these 4 celestial tools. Battle, battle, battle. He was fighting to his heart's content. The defense of his opponents far surpassed his, and would not be wounded by him at all, so he could attack without any reservations at all. This was a very good feeling. Ling Han was primarily using body arts to suppress them and various regulations as replenishment. The strength of his battle prowess was chilling. But after only 1,000 moves, the 4 celestial tools ceased attacking at the same time. The seals of light dimmed. Pa, pa, pa. They dropped onto the ground, and this time, they were no longer stabbed slantingly into the ground, but were rather just lying there, as if they had lost all their life. Wang. An intent suddenly entered into Ling Han's mind and took the form of a human figure. Ling Han was instantly shocked. This was the female celestial king that he had seen in the flow of time. Destined One, the fact that you can see me and hear these words from me means that not only do you have outstanding talent, you have also obtained devouring metal, the female celestial king said. This was only a sliver of intent of hers, so she was naturally communicating via divine sense as well. It is possible for you to become a heavenly venerable tier, and these 4 weapons that I have once used can also be fused by the devouring metal, helping it to advance to another stronger level. Senior, may I ask your name? Ling Han asked. Yet the female celestial king did not answer and continued. On the surface, the celestial realm is peaceful and calm, but in truth, there is danger in all corners. There are terrifying enemies spying on us, and if you can become a heavenly venerate, I hope that you can plow the halls and sweep the pavilions and resolve the foreign aggressions threatening the celestial realm once and for all. Additionally, my son has just been born, and I was killed. Being unable to watch him grow into a man is truly a regret. If you have the chance to see my son, help me pass on a message. Tell him that I miss him very much. My son's name is Yuan Shang, and the person who has killed me bears the title Jiwu. When these words fell, the female celestial king's figure disappeared with a tremor. This was only a thought that she had left behind in the celestial tools that had not dispersed. Now that her will had been passed on, she was naturally gone from sight. Yet Ling Han was stunned into speechlessness. It can't be that this female celestial king is the karmic life heavenly venerable's mother, right? It was extremely possible. No matter what, the descendant of a celestial king should be extremely awesome, especially when this female celestial king was already so powerful herself. Then, among the more famous Yuan Shangs that appeared after, there seemed to be only a single karmic life heavenly venerable, right? Furthermore, if that was not the case, when Ling Han had almost crossed the ages and managed to communicate with this female celestial king, why had the heaven and earth forcefully interrupted them? Because this implicated a heavenly venerate, an existence that surpassed regulations. Once any changes were made to the path of maturity of the karmic life heavenly venerable, a revolutionary change would take place in history. With such a powerful barrage of time, the whole realm could even collapse. Hence, the heaven and earth had to stop them. Moreover, the mother of the karmic life, heavenly venerable, had been killed by Ju, heavenly venerate. Could it be that that old guy had predicted that the karmic life, heavenly venerable, would affect his future plans, and had thus wanted to get rid of the karmic life, heavenly venerable, in advance, even before his birth? But even if he was a heavenly venerate, he was unable to fully predict every scene in the future. Thus, he had killed the karmic life, heavenly venerable's mother. Yet the karmic life, heavenly venerable, had already been born. As expected, first, there was the heavenly venerate Wu Lu sniping the elites of the foreign realm, and after came the self-sacrifice of the karmic life, heavenly venerable, which delayed the foreign realm for another 8 epochs, proving that the Jiwu heavenly venerate had not erred by making a move. He had just been slightly too late. This old bastard! Ling Han gritted his teeth in hatred. There were really quite a number of despicable deeds that Jiwu heavenly venerate had done before. Ling Han himself had been hunted down by him before, and it was 2 times at that. Old grudges and new hatred added together caused Ling Han to grit his teeth involuntarily. Please don't worry, Senior. You are considered my grandmaster as well one. With yours and master's hatred, added with my own, We have a 3-generation blood feud with the old bastard Jiwu. I will definitely kill this villain with my own hands. Ling Han murmured. This was not just a word of comfort for the female celestial king, but was also a show of confidence. He would definitely surpass the Jiwu heavenly venerate and kill this old bastard. He stretched out his hand in a grab, and the 4 celestial tools all fell into his hand. The intent of the celestial king had dispersed, and these 4 weapons were presently only celestial tools. They could no longer be revived, and were damaged at that. There was no rush to refine them. Ling Han took another step forwards and arrived in front of the celestial tree. He stretched out a hand and grabbed out at that celestial fruit. Z. The celestial tree swayed lightly, and the lightning immediately became as dense as a spider's web, and then turned into a bolt of lightning that struck out at him. Ling Han hurriedly parried this blow with a fist. Z. A feeling of electrocution immediately flowed through his body, causing his whole body to tremble. His bones had almost collapsed, even. What a strong attack. Ling Han was slightly surprised. Very rarely would a celestial tree be attack-focused, as they all usually tended to run quickly. However, this celestial tree was different. It did not flee, and was extremely ferocious. Do you think I'm scared of you? Ling Han stretched out his hand again, his body art unleashed to the extreme, a boundless aura spreading out from him. The celestial tree trembled, and that celestial fruit actually fell down. Ling Han was speechless. This celestial tree was completely a paper tiger. He had only just slightly revealed his strength, and it cowered, completely showing what a coward was like. However, since the celestial fruit had already been bestowed, Ling Han refrained from being too hard on it, either. He stowed the celestial fruit away, and did not further make things difficult for this celestial tree. Now that this had touched his hand, it could only be ingested by him alone, or could be concocted into an alchemical pill. Using a naturally complete celestial seed to concoct an alchemical pill, that was too wasteful. Moreover, this celestial tree had only borne 1 fruit, and was also closer to the heart of the celestial path. Clearly, this celestial fruit was also more valuable. Ling Han did not hesitate, and swallowed it directly. Is it delicious? Hunyo came over, practically drooling. She did not feel jealous that Ling Han had obtained an even better celestial seed, but only felt that it was a pity that she was unable to taste this kind of delicacy. Not really. Ling Han gritted his teeth, and multiple flashes of lightning were wreaking havoc in his mouth presently, crackling and popping loudly. Hunyo was instantly amused, and laughed out loudly. She was a glutton, but there was lightning melded into a fruit. Just thinking about it, the taste could not possibly be anything close to delicious. And the people around were all looking at Ling Han enviously. Not only had this guy obtained a complete celestial seed, 4 damaged celestial tools had even entered his pockets. Even though these celestial tools were damaged, they could be returned to the furnace and reforged, and any one of them could unleash their divine might once again. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.